Congratulations, Gareth. Congratulations to your mother as well. Yeah, well done. Happy birthday. Hey, dear Gareth. Happy birthday to you. Hip, hip. Hip, hip. Good. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're very welcome. I'd like to call for apologies. Hello, Donna. Thank you. Okay, we've got our Chief Executive is on his way, but I have apologies for lateness from... No! Councillor Salisbury's made it, and so has Councillor Hollis. I think we're all here. We've got apologies from Councillor Hughes, who is joining us on Skype this morning. I don't think we don't actually need to move that because she is virtually present. So public forum, there is none booked, no late items, no confidential business to be transferred to the open. Is there any change to the order of business? No, there is none. Any declarations of conflicts of interest for anything on the agenda over the next 3 days? The submissions, Councillor Robson.
Yeah, one or two of the submitters I've made personal donations to. I just put it on record.
Thank you for putting that on record. I'm going to raise that later on this morning by way of joke. But thank you, appreciate that. Business, moving to the annual plan hearings of the 2nd to the 6th of July. Josh Logan, Team Leader of Corporate Planning. Is there any presentation from staff this morning, or are we getting straight into submissions from our public? Fantastic, good as gold. Can I please have a mover that we receive the verbal and written submissions to the draft 2020-21 annual plan, moved by Councillor Salisbury, seconded by Councillor Clout. Any discussion? No, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against and carried. I'd like to welcome our first submitter this morning, Margaret Holmes from the Engine Room in Tauranga. And Margaret's submission, for your reference, colleagues, is on page 143 of attachment 2 or page 146 of your agenda. Margaret, the top table here is yours. There's a button with the word talk on it, and if you'd be good enough to press that when you're speaking. You have 10 minutes to use as you see fit, but if you finish a little earlier, some of my colleagues may have some questions. So over to you. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me here today. I'm not sure that I quite fancy kicking you off with the first submission. I would like to firstly commend you on the cycleways and walkways developments that you've in the plan. One of the things we learnt in lockdown was how much better the city is without all that smog. Personally, I would have liked the council to have had a bigger goal. Something like perhaps the goal that is in Los Angeles, to have 60% or 70% of their vehicles electric by 2025. I know that's harder for us because we have a large number of trucks coming into the port, but anything that gets cars off our roads or turns them into low emission vehicles is a good thing. But in reality, I want to talk more about the impact of the annual plan on businesses. So the Engine Room is a chartered accounting practice, and we work extensively with SMEs. SMEs produce 80% of the growth in employment in the country, so they are vitally important. And at the Engine Room, we believe that every successful business employs more people who spend more money in your community, which pay for the things that the community needs. They pay more taxes, which pays for things that the country needs. So, and as we know, all those businesses at the moment are under pressure, and many of them are just surviving. So your proposed rates differential, while fundamentally I agree, and was somewhat surprised to find that Tauranga didn't have a rates differential, I think to introduce it now will have such a significant impact on small businesses that you have to seriously consider how you go about this. So I've taken the opportunity to talk to a number of the business owners in the central business district, which, as you are aware, is under significant pressure already. And talking to them about what their rates were and the impact of a 20% increase in rates for them. So your average cafe, that means, your average small cafe, that means one more customer a day, every day of the week, just to recover the amount of money that your rates impact will have. For a jeweller, that means $100 to $300 sale a week that they have to find. Some of our cafes are currently experiencing a 30 to 50% downturn, and I know many of the other retailers are as well. Because until the commercial sector truly gets active back in the central business district, they're not going to have the foot traffic to build their businesses back up again. And many of them will not survive. And we've already seen a number of those businesses pulling out of the central business district because with the lockdown, it gave them an opportunity to work out which of their branches in the bigger businesses were profitable as opposed to those, if you think about it, the overall business might be making good money, but when you get time to look at it, some of those businesses aren't. So we're losing Helen Stein's, Just Jeans, Glassons, really important businesses to draw people into the city centre. But the further effect of those vacancies is the impact on commercial rents. So as they pay, and the value of a commercial rent impacts the value of the building. I heard the day before yesterday of one building which had a seeming market rent of $120,000 a year that has just been let out at $40,000 a year. So the impact of that reduces the value of that building from probably 2.4 million to 800,000. That reduces your rates take. So all of these things need to be considered before you impose more costs on our small businesses. Further, one of the bits of feedback I was getting, I haven't planned to talk about car parking because I'm sure you've got car parking drilled into you endlessly, but one of the comments I'd got was how much better it was for that limited time that free parking was available. And parking does make a huge impact on people coming into the CBD because of most of the stuff they can get out at the malls where the parking is free. Why would they pay for parking in the city centre? And while I believe that you have to have a high turnover of cars in the set parking in the city, I think a 1 or 2 hour free parking would make a huge difference to many of those small businesses in getting people into town and walking past their stores and looking in their windows and then coming in to buy something. And so I've managed to do this in 4.5 minutes. Excellent. Happy to answer some questions.
Well, congratulations, Margaret. Well done. Just checking, we've got some questions. One from Councillor Arbery, but I just want to do a sound check with Councillor Hughes. Councillor Hughes, can you hear us? Come in, Councillor Hughes.
Gone to sleep?
I can, yes, I can hear you.
Brilliant. Look, I'll give you first. Do you have any questions of this particular submitter?
Not at this time, thank you.
Good as gold, thank you. Just sing out when you do. Councillor Arbery.
Yeah, I've had a couple of my local business owners be quite concerned about the differential, but when we looked at the calculator with them, the local roast shop and local cafe, their rates were actually going to go down because of the UAGC change. So when you did your survey of the businesses, did you look at the actual total rates change? Or did
No,
you?
because it's actually quite difficult for them to identify. You know, they know what they get invoiced for rates rather than have a rates invoice to look at.
Okay.
You understand that? So the landlord invoices them a flat amount.
Right, okay. Yeah, so I think, what about the impact for rather than the small businesses with the lower capital values, what about the impact on those sort of medium-sized businesses? Do you have a feel for that?
It's fundamentally the same thing. So particularly in the CBD, you've got primarily retail and service businesses on the street level, and then you've got commercial upstairs. So the biggest problem for the city centre is the vacancies in the commercial, because if you can fill the commercial, the increase in numbers fills the shopping centres. Does that make sense? But thank you for pointing out to me that the change in the general rate has a different impact.
Any additional questions, colleagues? Councillor Baldock.
Just following on from Councillor Arbery, the rates calculator that's on our website, just checking with Paul, but also with you, if you're aware of that facility we have, so anyone can put in and find out what the rate is going to be. Are you aware of it on the website? I'm just looking for it now, Paul, but can you tell me where it is?
It should link through to the annual plan. I'll just check while we're...
All right, thanks. So that's a helpful way people can see what the way it all works out and how much it does, whether it is up or down.
Does that work from an address basis?
Yeah.
Councillor Robson.
Yeah, Paul, just talking about the rates calculator, and I think there's an issue here about the property structure, that if a small, so just for clarification, if I explain my question, a small business who's actually effectively subletting in part of a large building, their rates bill is actually a proportion of the rates bill on the large building, right? As opposed to a small business who own their own small building, where the rating increase may be offset by the UAGC. In a large building, you don't have that effect. So my question is, when a small property owner, when a small business owner who's in that situation, where they're effectively got a lease inside a larger building, when they put in, does that rates calculator indicate to them what effectively their rates bill will be?
I just had a point of order. Thank you, Councillor Arbery. It took me by surprise.
Thought I'd get one back over, John. I've had a couple of guests recently. From the rates calculator, it's done on dwellings, so a building with multiple shops within it has multiple UAGC charges, so I don't think that...
The question was to staff, but I thank Councillor Arbery for answering on the staff's behalf.
Yeah, and that is an acceptable point of order because I think it comes under personal explanation, so there you go. Mr Davidson.
Councillor Arbery actually answered the question in terms of that it does work on an address basis, so that information is available.
So if Elizabeth Cafe put in into the rates calculator, Elizabeth Cafe and the ANZ building put into the rates calculator, could they determine what their rates bill will be?
To be honest, I'm going to go and need to check that, exactly what
I think that's what needs to be clarified.
Thank you, that's useful. And thank you, Margaret, for coming in to submit to us this morning. As you can see, it has raised a few questions already. We'll be deliberating week after next and making some decisions on the submission, so thank you very much for coming in. Our next submitter is Angela Wallace from Athena House. Welcome, Angela. You can see how it rolls. You've got 10 minutes to use as you wish, and if you finish a little earlier, some of my colleagues may have some questions. So over to you, and I think you've got a presentation which is now on screen.
Kia ora koutou. It's an honour to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity to submit on the annual plan. My name's Angela Wallace. I'm the manager from Athena House, women's shelter for homeless women in Tauranga. So we opened just over 1 year ago, and we've had a whole lot of support from Tauranga City Council and many other donors. So I've made quite a big, I've put a big document into my submission, but I'm just going to summarise that with a shorter version. So I'll just let you know our mission. Our mission is to nurture, support and advocate for homeless women Our vision is that no woman in Tauranga Moana wakes up without hope for her future. So in the last financial year, we've had 41 women under our roof at Athena House, and from various types of homelessness. So as you know, the New Zealand definition of homelessness is quite wide. It includes people who are in unstable housing, etc. So you'll see there that there's a whole range of places where a woman have come from. The biggest one's no fixed abode, so that means they're going from place to place. They might be sleeping a couple of nights in a car, a couple of nights on someone's couch, a couple of nights in a doorway. So yeah, there's quite a wide range there, and you'll see that the rough sleeping is fairly low, and that's reflective of the way that women's homelessness is really hidden. And this is something that we identified when we were first setting up, that many people thought, oh, there aren't any homeless women in Tauranga, we don't see them begging on the streets. But for women, homelessness is quite different. Women are more vulnerable to being exploited or attacked, so they'll tend to hide themselves away in their cars, find a situation that they can make do for a while and then move somewhere else. So we are seeing these women being referred to Athena House, and we're able to support them. The ways we support the women at Athena House. There's a whole lot of programs and supports that we offer, and this is part of our wraparound support that we honoured to offer our women. So everyone who comes in is expected to engage with our budgeting, which is Tauranga Budget Advisory Service. They come in every week. We have mental health support. Pretty much every woman that comes to Athena House has had trauma and needs some support there with getting herself back in a place where she can even contemplate holding down a longer term rental. Addiction support. So addictions is a big challenge for many of our women as well. So what we do once we have them in, they've got a safe place to sleep, somewhere to just rest for a while, then they can start to think about, okay, what are my goals? How am I going to achieve these goals? Is using whatever substance I'm using going to help that? So we have Hamnet Clinic come in once a week, offer a group session and talk through all those addictions issues. Regular nurse visits. We have a nurse come in every week from the PHO. She helps all our women with their medical issues. And we're going for time, all good. Housing workshops, life skills. So part of being in our house, it's like a sort of extended family. So everyone who comes in has their own room. All the women share the living facilities, and everyone takes part in looking after the house. So from the veggie garden, planting stuff, harvesting it, cooking meals. We've got a roster system for the duties, which is always a bit of a challenge to get the engagement there, but we keep on pushing. But yeah, every woman has an opportunity to cook for the house, and there's a shared meal every evening. So that's a really good time for everyone to get together and share some kai and enjoy each other's company and encourage each other. We have a social worker on staff who, it's a big job for her to look after 11 to 12 women. We find the women support each other as well, which is amazing. Goal setting, personal development, dental clinics. Tooth Fairy Dental have come on board and offered a quarterly dental clinic, and that's life-changing. You know, if you've lost all your teeth, if you've got a rotten mouth, you don't feel like smiling, you don't feel like going to a rental property to present yourself and ask if you can rent that property. So it gives so much self-confidence. And counselling. That's just a few of the things that are offered. So COVID-19, well, that came along unexpectedly, and it's had some, we've had some huge challenges out of that, but we've come through it. At this point, everyone's been so resilient. I'll just talk through a few of the challenges that we've seen. So we've seen increased demand for our service. There are more women homeless as a result of COVID-19. There's financial pressures, redundancies, housing is even more squeezed than it was before. So we've got referrals waiting to come in. We have a full house, so every bed is full at the moment, and we're at capacity. Our goal for every woman who comes to Athena House is that she will be housed in her own rental property. And the squeeze is, the bottleneck is the housing supply of rental properties. And I think everyone's aware of that. That's a huge challenge for Tauranga and for the whole of New Zealand. So that's an area that we're really wanting to focus on, so we can move women at Athena House into rentals, continue our support when they're in their rentals so they can maintain that and be successful in those rentals, and then bring in all the women who are still homeless and needing some support. I'll just tell you a brief story of one of our women. I'll change her name so to protect her identity. So she's a young mum. She had 2 children, but they weren't in her care because of her homelessness, her lifestyle. She was living in her car. She came to Athena House last year, and she set really specific goals. She wanted to get her kids back. She wanted to get a home. She wanted to get a job. So she was with us for a number of weeks, engaged with all of our supports. She had huge challenges, but she ended up being so motivated, she got her own house. She's got a private rental. She actually took another woman from Athena House in as her boarder, so there were 2 women housed in her place. And from there, she's worked really hard, and she now has her kids back visiting for most of the time. So that's just one example of the impact that Athena House has had. A mum reunited with her kids, and those kids are able to live with their mum and have success. So this is a sort of a summary of our funding. So thank you to Tauranga City Council for funding us last year, $40,000. That was approximately 10% of our funding costs for the whole year. And you'll see there's a whole range of different funding sources there. Now, I've got an exciting announcement to make. Since I did the annual plan submission, we've confirmed government funding for Athena House. So we now have, yay! So we now have a contract with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. So you'll see in the second chart there that we're now 2/3 of our operational costs are covered. So that's going to make a huge difference. It's going to mean that we can take on an extra social worker and provide more support for our women. We're still really reliant on our other funders, and you'll see there's still a cluster of different funding sources there, including Tauranga City Council. So in our submission, we have requested that Tauranga City Council would again fund us for this financial year. The same amount that you funded us last year. It's really essential, and I think that looking after our locals, our women who are homeless, is part of the responsibility of our council here. So it takes a central government and a local government response. What's next? And there's some awesome work going on from council, so thank you so much for spearheading our city's response to homelessness. Athena House is a collaborator with the Kāinga Tupū strategy, and we're involved in the support area of that. So we're doing the supporting with the wraparound support, helping our people who are homeless get into somewhere which is helping them to get better housing outcomes. And kudos to Jodie Robertson for doing all the work, so much work on that. So thank you to Tauranga City Council for your financial support. These are our values. This is what we impart. This is how we live Athena House with our women. So I realise I'm out of time, but if there's any questions, I will leave it up to the chairperson if you can ask any questions.
I'll just hold them off at this stage, and perhaps via email to Angela as a follow-up. But thank you, Angela, for what you do. On a personal note, I remember meeting with you some 5 years ago at McCafe in Papamoa with the vision, and it's so good to see the right person in the right place at the right time and it coming to fruition. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Our next submitter, colleagues, is Philip Brown from the Papamoa Residents and Ratepayers Association. And Philip's submission is on page 312 of your agenda. Philip, I've got my hard hat under the desk, just FYI, right? Colleagues, we've just got some paper coming round, and I just want to also draw your attention to the email we received at 7:02 p.m. last night from Raj, which has the submission, the amended submission attached to it. That's in your email inbox, 7:02 p.m. last night. Thank you, Philip. We've got an A4 in front of us, so are you happy to proceed? Yeah, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, councillors, council staff and fellow submitters. I'm Philip Brown, representing the Papamoa Residents and Ratepayers Association. We did submit online or by a Zoom presentation during lockdown, but we have amended our presentation and I'm glad to be able to give it today. So executive summary is Tauranga has the highest rates in New Zealand. Financially, post-COVID-19, this year is turning out to be a year of economic uncertainty for many of Tauranga's residents. And yet the council is still proposing a rates increase. And in August, you will be voting to approve council-controlled curbside rubbish and recycling pickup, which will further increase the rates. The annual plan and long-term plans are financially unsustainable, environmentally unsustainable and eroding the quality of life for Tauranga residents. The Mayor says Tauranga is insolvent. This is not true, but the long-term plan has in past driven Tauranga into debt, and it continues to do so. All debt is bad debt. It is time to rethink the long-term plan with full community consultation and input. A business does not spend what it cannot afford. The same needs to apply to council. PRRA made a submission in May 20 highlighting the results of an online community poll conducted during the lockdown. The highlights were 94% of the respondents wanted a zero rate increase for 2021. 72% agreed a commercial rate rise was good. 92% rejected a council-controlled curbside rubbish pickup, which would add an additional charge to their rates. 96% wanted council to reduce operating expenditure, including staff and consultant fees, and to reduce capital expenditure. So where's council gone in the last month? Continued to propose a rates increase. Increase the commercial rates, good. Going gung-ho to introduce the curbside collection. Yes, and now appears to be getting into the business of rubbish. There's recently been an application to the Crown Infrastructure Partners for a $34.6 million of funds to upgrade the transfer station and buy optical sorting equipment for the materials recovery facility. Isn't this the function of the private contractors? Business is not a place for council involvement. And there's still a line item of $1.3 million for a rubbish app. And still the residents have no idea of the cost or the service to be provided. And also, you have not approved it. Staff costs. Amazingly, you remove from the annual plan the 3% annual allowance for staff salary increases, $1.9 million. Amazing line item. Other councils have proposed 10% salary decreases, yet the status quo remains here. There appears to be no major items removed from the annual plan in the growth items. And then there is the incredible blowout in the costs in the Eastern Corridor wastewater program to provide new and upgraded mains pipes in Papamar East and Titimu. The 2012 estimate was $47 million. 2020, as you know, is $160 million. Where is the integrity and the professional ability of the council estimating staff? And the excuses. Council used to budget for the likely cost of a project, but now worked almost the worst case scenario. How's it going to be funded? The $160 million would be split between ratepayer funded loans and growth funding and depreciation. And best of all, a shortfall in development contributions, however, meant that $15 to $20 million of growth funding was expected to be converted into ratepayer funded debt. Was anyone in council censured for this poor work? If this was a private business, they would be out the door, including the section supervisor. Or as many have said to me, is there a culture to pitch a lower price, have it accepted into the budget and into the annual plan, start work and then ramp up the final costs? This is not the only recent blowout. We can all list many. Cost overruns on council projects are the norm. It is a repeating trend. From the outside, there is no accountability, no heads roll. And who picks up the bill? The ratepayer. Just an aside, Harrington Street car park, this is an essential piece of infrastructure. It has to be strengthened or replaced. I'd like to talk a bit about the curbside and recycling pickup. We've done a lot of work on this, and there does not appear to be a valid reason for TCC to control the curbside rubbish and recycling pickup and add an extra charge to the rate. Using data supplied from the Joint Waste Assessment Report, the amount of waste generated in Tauranga per capita is about average in city rankings. And Tauranga has a very effective private recycling industry. Currently around 34% of domestic rubbish is recycled. The goal is 65%. Working with the numbers from this report, if only food and waste were additionally collected at the curbside, then the target of 65% would be exceeded. The costs of a council-controlled collection should be included in the rates without any increase in the rates. Cut back on the growth fund and invest the available money with your residents. What is the proposed rubbish plan? Do you know? Yet the schedule is that you will vote on it in August. This is potentially a $400 million charge to ratepayers over the next 20 years. The ratepayers would also like to know the plan before you vote. Be honest with your community, listen to the community and take on board their comments, and do not stealthily keep on imposing this charge. Do not conduct mock online surveys like Talking Trash, which had very selective questions designed to get to the answers that you want. Tauranga is not the worst city in New Zealand for waste, contrary to information in the council rubbish publicity. So in summary, there is no danger to our society or the well-being of Tauranga if the decision on curbside collections is deferred for 5 years. The processes of recycling are at change points now. Today's ideas may be superseded rapidly. Item number 2, long-term plan, unrestricted growth. One of the major roots of the long-term plan is based on the idea that Tauranga must continually grow and build new homes on new greenfield sites, which constantly extends the city limits. where we see the impending rezoning and inclusion of a further 190 hectares in Tauriko West. And already there is money in the annual plan to be spent there. The strategy of unfettered growth is not working for Tauranga. Each extension of the city limits placed extra burdens on the infrastructure, requiring expensive upgrades. New roads, new pipes, new wastewater facilities, increased traffic densities, increased travel times to work, which makes an impossibility of a public transport system and always increases the debt of Tauranga. All this expansion does is replicate the problems of Auckland and other cities with urban sprawl. Is this really your end goal? Equally, this diverting of rates into growth for new areas denies investment in the remainder of Tauranga. Look at the hollowing out of the city centre. The woeful traffic jams caused by 15th Avenue and the Turret Road Bridge narrowing. The lack of consumer spending downtown. Increased life stress. TCC has already throttled traffic in Greerton and slowed a major commuter route to a standstill. Now there is a plan in the annual plan to choke the traffic along Cameron Road. Why bother going to the city? Each extension of the city limits incrementally reduces the quality of life for our residents. Your model of growth is not financially sustainable. This has been proven for years, and it is dumping a large financial burden on the next generation of ratepayers. We know, you know, growth does not pay for itself. We have a choice in Tauranga. It is a given more people will choose to live here. So new residents could live within the existing city limits with more intensive quality housing, closer to work, no need to build infrastructure. Or we can continue the city limits and be forever underfunded, continually increasing the community debt and calling on ratepayers to pay more. This has been going on for years. The experiment has not worked. Which legacy do you want to leave for the next generations? I see my time is going fast, so I hope you read the whole presentation. I'll just go to the summary. This is a year for austerity. The Council's desire to spend is not matched by the ability or desire of the large part of your ratepayers to pay an increased rate. Equally of concern is the stealth introduction of the curbside rubbish recycling collection. The long-term plan and annual plan are not working for Tauranga. Growth which extends the city limits is financially killing Tauranga. The ratepayer should not be asked to pick up the cost of growth funding requirements they get no benefits. One sentence. It is time to develop a financially sustainable long-term plan that improves the quality of life in Tauranga and creates a better place to live in. Rates are for paying for what we use and the upkeep of these services. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip, for your submission on behalf of the association, and Council will be deliberating on the points you raise week after next. So thank you very much. Colleagues, our next submitter is on page 252 of your agenda, and it's Brian Hodge representing the Sydenham Botanic Park Advisory Group. Mr. Hodge, thank you and welcome. You're very familiar to Council submission processes. We have 10 minutes allocated, but if you finish a little early, then there may be some questions from my colleagues. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you for the opportunity to make a presentation on behalf of the Sydenham Advisory Group and the Sydenham Botanic Park Funding Trust. Also wish to thank the assistance we've had during the year from Tauranga City Council staff, particularly Diane Patton and Michael Vidanovich. This report submission was written before the Council heard the report on the 2nd of June via Zoom, and we wish to thank the committee, the Council, for its agreement to support the completing of the capital works. Just handing out a plan of the park so you can see what I'm talking about. We're happy to report that the mealybug infestation that we had last summer didn't reoccur this year, and except for the death of 2 trees, the trees seem to be recovering. We've completed the western pergola along the side next to the Brookfield School, and the climbers are starting to climb up the poles. We've been working on the wetland area, which is also a Tauranga City Council drainage pond, which has been enhanced by having the path completed through the area using an old bridge relocated from the Matua wetland. Our next project is work around the Pokapu Spring, which is a spring halfway up the southern slope. Our plan to clean the spring out, establish a pond in place of the rusty 44-gallon drum, which currently marks the location of the spring, and to develop a path through to the Nikau Grove. Work was planned to be done this winter, but it got stalled in March with the COVID outbreak. The contractor wasn't able to come on site and do the earthworks. We're still planning to put a footpath around the top flat area, between and under the two pergolas and across the front of the group. And the suggestion that I've made in my last three summaries is that the Trust and the advisory group would like to arrange for councillors to visit the park and just to see what we've been doing for the last nearly 9 years. And you'll notice that's on the handout, time for a visit. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions from colleagues? Councillor Baldock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Brian. And again, thanks for the work you and the volunteers do out there. Just clarifying that the climbers on the newly erected pergola are of the flora kind, not the children from the school. Sorry, a bit of humour. But
They are, yes.
are we making progress with the visit? Is it booked in yet?
It hasn't been so far, so
Okay.
we're having a committee meeting next week, and we'll make endeavours to get that organised.
So it'll come from you with a date and stuff?
Well, I presume it'll be a mutual arrangement.
Okay. Yeah. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, colleagues? Councillor Hughes, any questions? No? Mr. Wallace?
Just through the chair, we'll, through the Spaces and Places team, work with Brian and Democracy Services to schedule a visit.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hodge, for your presentation on behalf of the group. And thank you for the work that you folks have done there on behalf of our residents. So thank you very
Yes,
much.
we'd just like to show what we've done, and we need to renegotiate the agreement which was discussed at the Zoom meeting on the 2nd of June. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Colleagues, our next submitter scheduled is Sue McDougall from the incubator, but I do not see Sue is present in the chamber, so that would lead to hello, Paul. You're reaching for your microphone. Go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought I could just give an update on the rates calculator. So I have checked that is on the annual plan link. So it's, if you go onto the annual plan page through the website, it's on the right-hand side there, and that is operational. Question on it only applies to rating units, so it won't provide information at a tenancy level if it's part of a wider rating unit.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, Sue, how are you? Thank you. Thank you for coming in this morning. You've got 10 minutes allocated to give a verbal submission, and if you do happen to finish a little earlier, there may be some opportunity to have some questions from my colleagues. So thank you, and over to you. So the purple button in front of you, talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the committee to listen to me as a ratepayer. I've been here for 18 months. I didn't receive anything from the council about information about your collection of rubbish. It's my main concern. I live in Mongatapu and I live in the cul-de-sac, and on a Monday morning I have 8 to 6 private trucks coming whizzing down my street to collect a little bit of rubbish from the different people. I pay my rates in Auckland as well, and I notice that the rates here are extremely high compared to Auckland, and I have read that there's indication there's going to be a increase. When there's a kind of suggestion of that, I already know that there's going to be an increase. So personally, I buy rubbish bags with the sticker on. I have no rubbish bin. I didn't know what to do with my rubbish when I first arrived. I had no information at all. And you would know from my rates that my address had changed to my name. I got nothing from your council about it. So I had to go out and talk about it. I'm not interested in getting 6 or 4 bins and putting them in the back of my car and taking them, driving them to somewhere. So I put everything in this. Everything. Paper, card, tins. The only thing I don't do is the glass, which every second week I've got one little bin and I have to fill it halfway or right up to the top. They won't take it if there's only about 3 or 4 bottles in there. Personally, I find this economically and viable as we're supposed to be a green New Zealand. I do not find this very green at all. That's my main concern here. Also, as an Auckland City Councillor, I get an email telling me what's happening in Auckland, events, what the council's doing. I get nothing here from you guys, nothing. I do get your rates that I have to pay on time, so I do that. Another question, I've got a couple other things. I'm an artist, and so I know that you've got a submission from the incubator, which I am fully supportive of because I do workshops down there as well. But I've already submitted that on that. My other little question is, since being here, I've noticed over at the Mount that your previous council decided to take away the car park and put a huge amount of concrete that no one can use in the summertime, it's too hot, except for skateboarders. And where is the statue, that beautiful statue? Where has it gone to? Whose garden is that in? I wish it was in mine. But everybody says, "Oh, we don't know where it is." Excuse me. That's another piece of art that's gone. For me, we need to encourage people, the younger generation, especially here, of arts and the culture, and to look after it, and not to put a big, huge slab of concrete. Any questions? I've got.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sue. A question through me to Gareth Wallace, and I'm just asking, where is Mountie? Mountie's the statue. Yeah, where's Mountie? How's he at the moment?
He's in storage with the Mount Maunganui Main Street organisation, and my understanding is that the Urban Spaces team are trying to connect with them to go and see it, assess it for damage, or what would be required to remount it in Port of Takataka. So it's meant to happen sometime soon. I'll find out an exact date for you.
Thank you for that. We need to remount Mountie. Mia Powell.
Just for those that may not know, is this the surfer on the board, is it? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any further, thank you for that, Councillor Granger. Any further questions from colleagues? Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. I just wanted to tease out a bit about your view on the rubbish, because you use the plastic bag, you don't want the bins, or you do.
The bins, but where do I get one from? You've given me no information at all about bins.
All right. Well, so you need some information, because the bins are going to be provided if we go ahead with it. But you're up a right of way, are you?
I have in Mongatapu, and so they go down and then come back again. And I've counted 8 altogether sometimes.
There might be a place you can register your email with council and get all the information. I don't understand why you're not getting any, but maybe that's something that staff could follow up on.
Maybe someone should actually say, when the name of my name's gone on to your registrar, and then you've got many, many people coming into this area. I actually lived overseas for 11 years, so I'm coming back to New Zealand and decided Tauranga was a better place for me than Auckland. So, yeah.
do my
So
explanation.
if I could just ask, we
Yes.
have your details now. Are you comfortable that we get in touch with you directly using those details with the
sure.
information?
Yep, I can give you my business card.
That's brilliant. That's a solution in action. I love that. Councillor Kitty.
You mentioned that you get emails about events and information from the Auckland City Council. Are we doing anything like that for our ratepayers that are on our database? Are we giving them events information and info? I mean, obviously it can be collected, but you prefer to get it on email, is that correct?
I think everybody's going to email. I get I get all my rates by email. I don't get any paperwork. I don't get bank statements. I don't get anything. It all comes from email nowadays. But I get nothing of information about what the council's proposing unless I read it into the local papers.
Susan.
So I will talk to you about different ways you can access our information. We do have newsletters and you can subscribe to receive them via your email, and likewise with the rates, but I'll let you know how you can do that.
Fantastic. Councillor Hughes, do you have any questions? Anybody else? No. Thank you, Sue, for your presentation to us this morning, and we'll be deliberating over the next couple of weeks. So thank you very much. Our next submitter, colleagues, is Barry.
Just ask one. Invite you to my exhibition that starts on a Friday down at the incubator for the last month, for a whole month. It's all about the COVID and being locked up.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sue. Thank you for that plug as well. That's fantastic. Our next submitter is Barry Scott. And Mr. Scott's submission is on page 508 of our agenda. And as you're making your way to the microphone, Mr. Scott, you've been allocated 10 minutes to use as you wish. If you finish a little earlier, then there may be the opportunity to have some questions from my colleagues. So thank you, and over to you.
Good, thank you. All this technology. First of all, I want to congratulate the staff on the job they have done with the presentation of the consultation material, the marketing and the follow-up contact. It's been a job well done, and they get 10 out of 10 from me for that. I just wanted to mention that. I've had my say in writing at length, you might feel. You've read it and you'll agree with it or not as you choose. But I want to emphasise a couple of things. Let me remind you of the wording of section 10 of the Act. It says that the purpose of local government is to enable democratic local decision making, and it is to promote the social as well as the economic well-being of the community. And that means all the community, not just the parts with the loudest voice or the deepest pockets. Some sections of our community, and I took part with Philip in the online survey and read all of the replies that came in, and I learned to understand that there are some parts of our community that struggle not only financially but socially as well. There's quite a lot of people suffering out there. And these people, a lot of them don't have their voices heard simply because they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to go about it. And I want you to remove that barrier and use a format that reaches more people and makes it easier for them to understand what's going on and how they might take part. Nothing, in my opinion, beats face-to-face local consultation. And I'm asking that you don't just use a megaphone from City Hall, but you hold a council sitting in each suburb. I know you're pressed for time, but even once a year in a suburb would be a help, I think. And a sitting that has an agenda that deals primarily with local matters, but also explains the bigger projects as well. Let the locals actually see how the council works. talk about local topics, take in local concerns. I mean, really take them in. Get to understand the social effect of your decisions on the people living in that particular suburb. And I think that will work to create a better climate of understanding between the council and the local people and the residents. Next, it's said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, I'm not saying that you're insane, but when residents see repeated cost and time blowouts on projects, we wonder if the council has learned anything from the past. I think, or what I would like to see, is that you carry out your own personal investigations into finding the causes of these problems and bring about changes where they're shown to be necessary. Don't just rely on the Max Pedersen reports, the Ministry of Business Investigation and all the rest. Actually get down, try to take control and stop the rot. Next, please postpone your deliberations on the proposed curbside collection scheme. Chuck away the idea of pushing it through in August. There hasn't been legal consultation with the community. Now, we read that there was consultation through the long-term plan in 2018. Well, you know, that's all there was, just those 2 pages. That's all there was. Headed up, should we provide a rates-funded curbside waste and recycling collections? Now, that is not consultation. And if we end up with a half-baked system, one that the community hasn't had input into, we could have the potential to end up in, the whole thing could end up in tears and anger, letters to the paper, Samantha, and frustration. And that will be felt by the council as well as by the residents. If it takes an extra 2 or 3 months to consult, if it's got to go through to September or October, well, so be it. We're not under any pressing deadline for this thing, and we need to do it properly and to take time to do it. So please come to us and talk to us about it. On costs for that scheme, we've only been given estimates, and we all know how well that's worked out with other projects. Estimates of cost have just gone crazy. And the rest of the scheme, quite frankly, most of the people just haven't got a clue about it and how it will affect us. You haven't given us the full picture, and it's your legal obligation to do so. Consult with the public. We have the right to be heard, and we want the same thing as you at the end of the day. A curbside collection that will be of a benefit to the committee, not a burden. Finally, another legal obligation that you must keep in mind when you're making your decisions is the need to consider the effect that those decisions will have on the people they will touch. As I've asked you before, put yourselves in their shoes. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Barry. Are there any questions from my colleagues for Barry? No, they're all nodding. So thank you very much.
Okay.
And on a personal note, thank you for your guidance via email from time to time as well. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, our next submitter is on page 269. Is Cheryl McClay present in the chamber? Just outside. Okay. Oh, hello, Cheryl.
Hello, Steve.
Good morning, and thank you for coming and submitting to us.
You like me?
Just come up to the microphone with the red light on.
Oh, that's fancy.
It was good to have a coffee with you the other day, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you for submitting, and you've got 10 minutes to use as you see fit.
Oh, and a
yeah,
stopwatch.
well, watch out. Oh, my goodness. But if you do finish a little earlier, then my colleagues may have some questions for you.
Cool.
Thank you. Over to you, Cheryl.
Right, good morning. My presentation is very simple. It's focused specifically on aquatic facilities, the progress with or not. This isn't the first time that I've spoken to council on this particular issue. Last time was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and again nothing happened. So last ditch effort before I retire from all things swimming. Right, I run a swim program called Team Shorebreak. We mostly run our pool program out of Baywave, but as of tomorrow that program's now been sold to the Mount Swimming Club, and my involvement in it finishes. So I no longer have a vested interest in much to do with the management of Tauranga City Council pools, but I want to make some comments around the approach that Bay Venues takes to managing those pools, and particularly with regards to the suggestion in the annual plan that the lane hire and the pool entry fees just continue to be increased. I want to talk to you a little bit in terms of my background as an economics teacher, and I want to talk to you around price elasticity of demand. I want to talk to you about where the tipping point might be, and particularly given what we've been through in the last 4 or 5 months. Incomes for most people, particularly for families with children, who for the most part are the customers, if you like, of swim coaching programs, Learn to Swim, and more competitive programs like ours. They're the people that have been hit the hardest. They're the people whose incomes are not growing. In fact, for a lot of them, they're decreasing. I know that the increase in prices was suggested prior to the lockdown, but still within the period where we knew about COVID. And common sense should have dictated, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, but common sense should have dictated that we had a little bit of foresight, and that we should have been able to predict that there was going to be some economic impact, regardless of how it played out. I'm going to suggest to you that the lane hire charges that are the increase, and that applies also to all other Bay Venues hire charges, that you're hitting the wrong people. You're hitting the people who are suffering the most. You're hitting the people who are involved, for the most part, in not-for-profit organisations, who are struggling to get fees in from children. And my view of it is that the kids shouldn't suffer for this. There are families already who are removing their children from programs, from being involvement in sport, because they can't afford it. To add insult to injury and to increase the cost of playing those things just seems to me to be socially irresponsible. I've spoken to council before about deciding what your facilities are for, and I think that council for many decades has had a lot of difficulty in figuring out whether you have a social obligation to the people who live here, or whether you're just simply running facilities for profit. I'm going to suggest that if you're running facilities for profit and that's your focus, then council shouldn't be running facilities. The Adams Centre is a good example of that. Was pleased to see that the $5 million that was asked for has been deferred. I'd like to see that canned completely. I fail to understand why a city council is running a high-performance sports centre and paying for it out of rates. It just doesn't make any sense at all to me. I've asked those questions since it was first mooted, and am yet to be convinced that it's an appropriate thing for a city council to be doing. by all means allow the centre to use a facility or a building, and I do understand the background of that old commercial club building, but for council to be paying operating costs for something like that is absolutely crazy. The reason cited for the increase in lane hire fees has been increased operating costs. I'm going to suggest to you that the operating costs are out of control. I totally agree. But every time you turn around, there is yet another person being employed in a management position. And they're all running around in circles chasing their tails. $100,000 salary for a management person, and I'm only pulling these numbers out of the sky, but $100,000 to do away with one $100,000 position would get more money back into the coffers than the increase in venue hire. Before you raise prices, you need to have a look and see the efficiencies around staffing and around operating costs. And I don't mean by way of turning the lights out because they can't afford the electricity bill. I mean the number of people that walk around that complex in blue shirts. Somebody needs to do a very serious analysis of what they're actually contributing to the place. In some cases, very little. In some cases, I would suggest that there's a cyclical process going on where everybody's making everybody else look busy. But adding a new staff member at that management level does not increase the service provided. Now remember that none of the COVID costs have been factored into this request. It's all pre-COVID when the numbers were done. $1 million on a splash pad that runs all day, every day. I coached an adult squad at 9 o'clock in the morning yesterday with a splash pad running. It would be like having a waterfall in the middle of this room at high volume. We were there for about an hour and a half, not a single user. Why is it on at 9 o'clock in the morning on a weekday? $1 million requires 175,000 additional child entries to the pool just to cover the $1 million. And that's without factoring in anything to do with operating costs. But yet Bay Venues spent that money, and now they're coming back and saying that the people that were already using the pool, your bread and butter customers, need to pay more to use the facility because we keep spending money on things that really are irrelevant. Great piece of play equipment, but it belongs in a playground. It doesn't belong in a swimming pool. Seen hundreds of them around the country and around the world, but they're all in parks. Put it down at Mount Drury. Put it at Papamoa Domain, or anywhere in between. It doesn't belong at Baywave. $1 million. 175,000 extra kids have to pay a pool entry to cover that cost. I'd love to see where we were at this point. It's been in about 6 months. I would say the pool usage is down rather than up. I think the key point really is that there's a lot of work that needs to be done before you just simply knee-jerk reaction and put prices up every time something changes. There's a lot of work to be done on analysing the management structure, the way in which it's funded, and what it actually contributes to the running of those facilities for the community. All you've done is create a massive bureaucracy. Right, that's it from me.
Thank you, Cheryl. And Councillor Kitty and I are actually meeting with Chief Executive of Bay Venues tomorrow around some of the other things we discussed last week or the week before. So
Cool.
Thank you for your submission, much appreciated.
Excellent.
Colleagues, our next scheduled submitter is Scott Brundle. Is Scott about? Is he outside the chamber, or he's not inside the chamber? Is he outside the chamber, folks? Okay, so Scott is not present. Our next scheduled submitter after Scott is Jordan Williams. Is Jordan present outside the chamber? Oh, is Jordan Skyping in? Yeah. Okay, but that's in 10 minutes' time, so he may not be available yet. We'll just check. Okay. Well, I see Erica about. Hey, Erica, would you mind giving your submission earlier? Is that all right? Fantastic. Hey, thank you, and congratulations on your selection the other day. Well done. So yeah, if we're all set up, we can hear from you now if you like. And Sean from Pacific 7. Yes, thank you, Sean. You've witnessed how the others have gone through. So yeah, 10 minutes to use as you see fit. And if you do finish it a little earlier, then my colleagues may have some questions for you.
That's cool, thank you.
Thank you, over to you.
We're doing a joint submission. So good morning, my name is Erica Harvey, and I'm speaking on behalf of small business owners and users of Tauranga's Marine Precinct. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak to our submission today because, as you are aware, there are significant issues surrounding the design and functionality of this precinct, and it is currently not fit for purpose. These issues have resulted in significant loss of income to our region over the past 4 years. We need to rectify this. There are also metrics in place that TCC need to achieve to ensure there is no disruption to the financial contribution it received from the Bay of Plenty Regional Council's Regional Infrastructure Fund for this development. When the Marine Precinct Funding Agreement was signed in 2015, it was supposed to, and I quote, help protect the local marine industry, create opportunities for economic development, and in turn contribute to jobs remaining here and being created here, end quote. Unfortunately, this development has done the opposite of what it intended. When I started this journey in 2016, I represented over 25 small businesses being forced to close or leave our city due to previous council not listening to the industry that this precinct was designed to support. To put this into numbers, those businesses pushed away represented an estimated $30 million of revenue lost per annum. Since 2016, that equates to $120 million lost to our local economy. That was previously being allocated for repairs, maintenance, upgrades, accommodation, restaurants, and retail stores, to name a few. It seems that the marine industry is often looked at like a dirty secret, but the truth is, we are significant contributors to this region. We aren't just fishing companies. Sean, beside me, has a marine engineering business, also experiencing the negative impact this development has had on his company. Currently, there is only one area allocated for the entire marine industry to use, in Tauranga's world-class marine precinct, which, depending on how you measure it, is either 4 meters or 5 meters of truck-to-boat space. I've placed visuals on page 4 and 5 of our submission to highlight this, including comparisons to other marinas in New Zealand. What that logistically means is there is one area provisioned for the entire industry to use. That area is used to load and unload equipment off vessels, put ice on, get diesel, unload fresh seafood, and this one shared space measures, at best, 5 meters. What we are asking for in your annual plan is the first phase in correcting this development. We are asking for a wharf extension. This extension would be jointly funded and is essential to provide a basic level of functioning to Tauranga's Marine Precinct. Phase 2 will require a long-term strategy as TCC has made promises to two groups, users and landowners, which are contradictory to one another. However, I believe that where there are problems, often there are opportunities. Tauranga is facing rapid growth, but also facing rapidly growing problems. And it's no secret that we need more government support and funding to help with infrastructure, particularly when it comes to roading and transport. And we believe our industry can assist in getting the support we need as a city. We need to be forward-thinking and look for ways we can support local and be innovative in finding solutions to incorporate a variety of industries, all working together. We believe there is a significant opportunity and upside to working with our industry, not only for the city in helping to assist with the economic recovery post-COVID-19, but also to create local tourism opportunities that we so desperately need to bring life back into our CBD. Imagine coming down to Tauranga's waterfront, seeing sustainable fishing boats delivering the freshest seafood this country has to offer to local restaurants situated on the waterfront. However, to get there, if the city wants it, we need to start working more collaboratively across a variety of industries and sectors. There are many examples globally to highlight the positive economic impacts having an area like this could bring, and it could just be what this city needs. But firstly, we need to address the predominant issue of the waterfront size and begin the process of bringing that lost revenue back into the city. I'll pass the second half of the submission over to Sean Kelly, who is one of the landowners in Tauranga's Marine Precinct, to speak on their behalf.
Does that go now? Hello, everyone. This isn't the first time I've come to a City Council meeting to deliver this message. And the message that I'm going to deliver to a new council yet again is we need more wharves. I don't know, I spent many nights wondering how we can actually measure the public good of having more wharves in our seaside town. And for example, one of the things I'm unable to do is compare a new wharf, a new fisherman's wharf, for example, to the proposed cycleway between Memorial Park and town, okay? There's obviously a big difference in public good and users of those two items, but in some ways, to me, similar structures, believe it or not. So all I can do is harp on to you guys. It's about jobs for us, it's about frustrations, it's about having a seaside town where you compare Tauranga and our industry here, when you compare them to Opotiki, which is getting a $70 million port, when you compare it to Whakatane, who's getting a $30 million marina, conceivably. Well, we've already got the industry here, and an industry that's facing considerable frustrations and cost because of the lack of facilities. And when I say lack of facilities, if I could point out to you Coronation Pier, a clanger. There was, I can't remember how many berths, but probably a dozen commercial berths that disappeared with Coronation Pier. There's also, for example, Salisbury Wharf at the moment, which needs some repairs. I don't think they've been completed, but there's parts of it that are unusable, and it faces problems with the weather, etc. as well. You've got the Beacon Wharf, which is currently condemned, again another commercial facility. So the first time I parked a boat in Tauranga, I was 16, and there was a hive of activity. I've been through periods where there was, for example, 150 tuna longliners working out of here. We had the days of the 600-ton slipway, and particularly all the American tuna boats, all the albacore trawlers that used to come here. Spent a lot of money here. There's big engineering firms that their businesses supported, etc., etc. So that's kind of what we're talking about in terms of the losses to the town, in terms of losses to the economy. So what we're saying to you is we need more wharves. I don't particularly know how to measure the public good of that, but when you make comparisons of other seaside towns, such as Hobart, it's a good one, such as Fremantle, well, we've got everything to offer that those places have, but we can't provide it as the way things stand. But one thing that wharves can do, which I'm sure we can measure some public good in terms of the CBD, is exactly provide us a seaside arrangement such as Hobart, with restaurants and fishing boats unloading and et cetera, et cetera. We don't have that. So that's my message to you guys. We need more wharves. We've got plenty of ideas on how to do that, and we want you to understand the benefits for the town as a whole, as we see it. Obviously, it solves some frustrations for us, but for example, my business is growing. We've got 8 commercial boats in this port. The Harveys have got 5, and growing. So the town's growing, our businesses are growing, but the infrastructure is doing the opposite.
And I'd also like to point out as well that as two groups of people, we're really keen on working together to provide a solution for council. This isn't about looking at the past and seeing what's been done. For us, it's about looking at the future and how we can work together with the Tauranga City Council and coming up with a solution that's mutually beneficial for everyone.
We also have a group that, believe it or not, is very cohesive. There's about 25 members in our user group, and we're more often than not able to completely agree on what we want and how to do it. So we are a good modern adult group.
I second that.
Thank you. Thank you. That brings to a conclusion your joint submission. Thank you. We've had one submitted drop out, so we have time for some questions. Councillor Robson, then Mayor Powell.
Yeah, thank you, Erica and Sean, and I appreciate the work/fight that it's taken to get to here.
Sorry, just a second. I'll just reset the microphones. I've got a power button here.
Thank you, Chair. Just to repeat, thank you for the work/fight that it's taken to get as far as you've got. We're at priority 1. Sean raised the issue about the economic. How helpful, supportive have priority 1 been? They are our de facto, it's an unusual situation, but they are our currently de facto economic development agency. How much support have they given you? How much more do you need from them?
I have personally met with Priority 1 in the very beginning of this when I was trying to work with the council. I was told that their plan wasn't the plan that council had adopted, and therefore I believe it was their point of view that this was a council issue, and that's kind of where it stayed when I met with Priority 1. I don't know if Sean has.
I've talked to them from time to time on various matters over the last 10 years, and sometimes they have some focus and some time for us, and sometimes we don't hear from them for a long time. Recently, I met with them, and they brought a large ferry company to town to look at a bunch of things, one of which the ferry company needed some better wharves to potentially provide the services that they wanted to. And I sort of said to Priority 1 at the time, well, that's all very nice and they need that, but we've got some needs with wharves too. So we won't be very happy if you build these guys new wharves if they come to town, and we've been telling you for ages that we need some.
Appreciate that, thank you.
A question from Mayor Powell, and then finally Councillor Baldock.
Councillor Robson talked most of my way around Priority 1, but Erica, you mentioned the stats, the job losses. Where have they come from?
When we couldn't get help through the council, we hired an independent consultant, and he analyzed the entire industry, met with different companies, and he was the one that came up with the analysis of finances by going through.
Okay, thank you. I grew up in this industry as a kid here in Tauranga, so it means a lot to me as well. And the re-establishment of the marine industry, I know there's a lot of work going into it. It would be great to meet with you at some stage, though, because there should be no conflict between the ferry service, which is going to become, I think, a critical part of UFD, and what your needs are. So I'd hate to think that that's been the messaging. So I think we should talk about that sooner rather than later. But thanks for all the work you've both done on this.
Thanks. I do think one of the main issues that we have is that the council have sold most all of the waterfront land privately. Therefore, there is nowhere to kind of put these wharves. So I think that also comes into play as well. I think the only way that we could probably figure out where to establish this would be to maybe a joint discussion with council, iwi, you know, maybe priority one, I think it is like a joint effort, because we will have to move from that site to enable the landowners to do what they were told they could do in that area.
Councillor Baldock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity given the cancellation to have another question. I think your submission is very helpful, because what I'm hearing is wharf space for the fishing industry. And if that's the correct takeaway from your submission, I'd like just to hear you confirm that, because I was a founding party of the working party that started the Marine Precinct off, and it was to address the loss of the slipway, to preserve the marine industry, but it was about work on the boats, not, you know, the fishing industry. So we seem to have missed that part of it in this whole process. So I think it's kind of, for me, it's hard to get the message when I hear you talk about the Marine Precinct and its failures, when actually the issue here is just a whole another industry that we've missed in the provision of wharf space and so on. And as you mentioned, the loss of Coronation Pier some time ago that has never been replaced. Can you just tell me if I'm hearing right from you?
Yeah, so it's not just wharf space, it's truck to boat space, which means that we need to be able to get a truck up to a boat. So that is correct. And I think the main issue with the design of the Marine Precinct was that the council sold the waterfront to private entities, which are competing businesses, which would create a competitive, an anti-competitive nature to make all industry use just that area that was sold privately.
Supplementary if I can, because I'm not a fisherman, but is the harbour bridge an impediment for your vessels to come this side, or does it all have to be on that side? That's one of the things we need to understand, I think.
It's a bit low, but I have spoken to a lot of independent business owners who have said that should the available be made on the front, they would adjust their mast to ensure that they could fit under it. Some obviously wouldn't, but I think there still is, you know, we still have 5 meters there that they can use if there was another facility, so, yeah.
If I could just add a little bit more to that. So there's, as well as the fishing industry, for example, there's at least 4 barges in the harbour, 4 roll-on, roll-off barges that service Motiti and Matakana Islands. So I'm just using that as an example of other users, and for example, at least, well, they all use the Marine Precinct facility for maintenance, etc. But you know, they need to bring their barge into town every now and then. They need somewhere to park it, to work on it. All of the work that goes on, all the maintenance work, is not necessarily when the barge is out of the water. I'm just giving you an example. So, for example, I effectively compete with our boats, with the fishermen for space, such as the unloading berth, the 5 metre present unloading berth. We have to go there to fuel. We have to go there, back our truck down the wharf and lift the winch on. So we're fighting over the space. And for example, there's 3 of my boats that will never get under the bridge. So I can't go up to town and use the floating pontoons or anything like that with a number of those boats. So there was actually I have reread it a few times in the objectives of the Marine Precinct. It was part of the policy in order to provide infrastructure to the fishing industry. So in fact, I would argue that the Marine Precinct did not deliver on that at all to the fishing industry. That's one point. In real terms, in terms of berthage, the Marine Precinct provided 1 brand new 30-metre wharf, okay, which is a part of the hard stand. So, for example, that's not necessarily conducive to 5 or 6 fishing boats a day coming in, tying up, and trucks backing in there to unload. There's been another very badly designed, in my view, finger jetty immediately adjacent to the travel lift bay, okay? And for example, that's not a wharf where you can get a truck anywhere near. and also it's got some other issues. It's now been turned into a customs jetty, so we get locked out of there as well. So yeah, there are a number of other issues.
Thank you, Erica and Sean, for the submission, and there's some further conversations to be had, and obviously on the specific submission we'll be deliberating week after next, so thank you for coming in today. I see we've got the New Zealand Taxpayers Union online. Jordan Williams, are you there? Come in, Jordan. Oh, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
That's okay, we'll fix that very briefly.
Oh, brilliant.
My name's Louis, I'm the campaigns manager at the Taxpayers Union.
Oh, g'day, Louis.
Menon, and Jordan's here now. Jordan, they can't see us, so our camera may be off. Oh, they should be able to. Oh, okay.
While they're sorting that out, I note we had Councillor Robson declared an interest in terms of donating to some community organisations, and I know that Councillor Arbery in the past has also declared an interest in terms of working with the homeless, which I think speaks to their character. I've donated in the past to New Zealand Taxpayers Union, so I declare that now as an interest. Speaks to my character.
We're picking up every second word. I'm not sure what the issue there is.
No, that was
hear us loud and clear?
a bit of banter. We're just sorting out some technical issues on our end, and we'll try and make you full screen. There we go. Fantastic. Where's Porky? I can't see Porky in the background. I'm very disappointed. I was baiting him on Twitter last night, and he's not there.
I think he's hard at work. The office is full today. With all the government is spending a lot of money, so it's everyone's working red hot. So how long, Mr. Chair, do we have? Just so I don't run over time for you.
No, thank you, Jordan. You've been allocated 10 minutes, but if you do finish earlier, then my colleagues may have some questions for you.
Okay, that's good. I only plan to speak for a few minutes and then take questions. Firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity. As Louis Holbrook, our campaigns manager, introduced, we've also got Karan Min, who is one of our economic advisors. So the Taxpayers Union, we're a fiscally conservative pressure group. We stand for lower taxes, less waste, more transparency across all levels of government. I know that some of the councillors are aware of some of our work, supported by about just shy of 60,000 registered members and supporters, many of which are in your lovely local area. The background to this campaign fit is really the financial and economic troubles of COVID-19. We come from a premise that an economic emergency such as this is not the time to, and because of the structure of your main income being rates, being untied to ratepayers' ability to pay, it is a particularly nasty tax in terms of the households, many of which are losing their income or many of which whose livelihoods are at very real risk in the months and probably years to come. So, unlike central government, where most tax is levied on spending, income, or other ways to measure the ability to pay, rates obviously do not work like that. And the reason that Tauranga in particular pinged our interest is twofold. First, obviously, just the sheer scale of your original proposed rate increases, but secondly, the unusual economic theory proposed by your centre-right mayor, that it is the role of council for economic development. Let me be very clear. Taking money from a community for councils to spend on economic development is a false economy, especially when most of that income is taken using a particular tax that does not reflect a ratepayer's ability to pay and is based on assets rather than income or profit. So I've had Karan do some stats for me, and I see that since 2014, your rates as an organisation, your rates income has increased by 6.5% over that period per year since 2014, with inflation somewhere between 1.2 and 1.3% over the same period. I see in your proposed annual plan that you propose this income to go up by a further 6%. We say this is not justifiable and is not reasonable in the current situation. Louis tells me that recently Tauranga and Horowhenua and Horowhenua have not just freezing rates, are actually reducing the rates burden on their communities, and we applaud that. And of course, South Taranaki is the latest to announce a rates freeze. So let's take a look at some areas that you could possibly do that. We note that 138 employees paid more than $100,000 at the council. We're amazed that your payroll as part of this budget has not been frozen. In fact, your payroll costs are still forecast to go up 2%. That is very difficult to justify. To be putting payroll costs increasing even higher than the Treasury's forecast inflation rate, we would argue is totally unjustified. And in fact, your total expenditure, notwithstanding the Mayor's comments that this is this budget is you're cutting back, your total OPEX is going up by 4% in your proposed budget. So I'm sorry to be the Scrooge, but that is the role. We understand as a council you will get countless organisations appearing before you wanting you to spend more money on their particular pet causes. I haven't heard the albino snail people present to you today, but they'll be there somewhere. We are the ones that represent the ratepayers, and we're saying to you now is not the time to increase council taxes. You should be cutting back just like every household and business across the city. So with that, we're more than happy to take questions.
Thank you, Jordan and Louis. Colleagues, are there any questions? Councillor Arbery.
May surprise some of my other colleagues, but I am actually a member of the Taxpayers Union. There it is. Hey, just a question for you. Have you seen the report outlining the economic impacts and the impacts on particularly housing affordability if the council doesn't spend infrastructure to allow more housing to come online?
No, I haven't seen it. If it's a local one, no, I haven't seen it, although it would surprise me if the council thought that they were doing low-income residents a service to be increasing rates to provide housing for some. I mean, our argument would be in housing that your role is to get out of the way, to reduce the regulatory costs is the best thing the council can do. I haven't seen trying to provide some comment to that. I didn't catch your first comment though. What resulted in some laughter? I didn't catch it. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm a member of your organisation, which some of my colleagues find amusing.
Any other questions, colleagues, before we release the submitter? No further questions. Look, thank you, Louis and Jordan, for your submission on behalf of the union, and we'll be deliberating in just over a week's time, and so yeah, thank you for that, much appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please give my regards to Porky, and please convey my disappointment that I did not see him on screen this morning. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, colleagues, our next submitter is Chris Ingram from Bike Tauranga. I saw Chris about. There he is. Good morning, Chris. You're very familiar with our processes, so I'll hand over to you directly.
Hey, there we go. Well, good morning, Mayor Tanby, councillors.
I'm Chris Ingram, resident for nearly 50 years now, and appreciate this opportunity to address you on recreation track matters important to us all. And on this occasion, I'm not here with an open waving palm and asking and ear-bashing you for more money. Instead, councillors, as a committee member of Bike Tauranga, with our vision of more people of all ages, 8 to 80, on bikes more often and more safely, and headed by Kevin Kerr, whom you heard last week, I'm here to thank you for your vision and good work initiating a network of safe tracks within the city for recreation, for commuting, that's so important, social biking, and to encourage you to continue investing in social biking, in the physical and mental health of our citizens and ratepayers with cycleways. So we're applauding the intensive efforts of Karen Young and Andy Vong and their planning and constructing teams in Parks and Recreation, coping with the government's ever-changing demands and shifting goalposts, to present you with project options so that you can make the best decisions possible on these things, such as with Natai Road for the school kids and Totara Street as well. And we thank you for the approval and the funding of these projects, along with many others, but specifically for the 90% government-funded Pilot Bay Marine Parade project trial. And I can repeat, this is a trial funded 90% by the government, and we don't believe that you've got rocks in your heads in making that decision. Bike Tauranga is grateful to have been invited to collaborate with the Council Bikeways planning team, offering suggestions for safe tourist and safe commuter trails through the town. And for those of you who've biked in town, you may have experienced how difficult it is to find your way around our maze of roads. So Bike Tauranga is working with Council on this. So locals and visitors and new arrivals, for them we've suggested 6 safe, circular, suburban cycle and walking routes, off-road where possible, in various neighborhoods, and each designated by, shall we say, colored signs. This is the red trail, this is the green trail, to help people get around. And also we want to produce maps to download or pick up at bike shops and cafes. A modest cost for council to make a big difference, helping folk enjoy a couple of hours pleasant biking around different neighborhoods with a start and finish where there's good parking and a cafe. Another aspect is the Antenno application that I have on my smartphone here. And it's such a simple way for anyone to make a notification of unsafe or unsatisfactory road situations. Hazardous bollards, vegetation, obscuring sight lines, dangerous corners. And over a couple of years, I've probably sent 23 of these to the council and received courteous replies with analysis of the problem and if and when and how the problem can be fixed. And it works so well in achieving speedy, low-cost fixes that improve safety for our commuters, walkers, bikers, and car drivers too in the city. And your maintenance team on this really do excellent work. They're so great. And you'll appreciate how us bikers and walkers are the eyes and ears on the roads. We're on them every day, either on 2 wheels or 2 feet. And Antenno is the most effective tool to make traveling safer like that. The underpass, the Bayfair underpass victory was wonderful, achieved through the efforts of many people, a Sunday protest by 1,000 massed high-vis cyclists in October, plus the persuasive mega negotiating skills of our mayor and council team in Wellington. So thank you very much for that huge victory for commuting bikers, tourists, students, shoppers, disabled, well, really everybody who crosses it. Moving on, possibly in August, 8 weeks away, the completion of 2 major projects will create an 85-kilometre cycle trail, or maybe 135-kilometre cycle trail, with exciting implications for tourist bikers and some tourism payback. And I'm talking of the Wairoa Bridge clip-on, which will bring Western Bay's Omakroa Trail to the city boundary and to Carmichael Reserve, where it stops. Here's an indication of it. And on the left side, then Omakroa to Tauranga. Then at the other end of the city, on the right side, 85 miles along, the Papamoa East Greenbelt Recreation Way, plus the Te Okarua Drive, will lead folk to your brand new 6-hectare stormwater dispersal project for all the new subdivisions there. And it's going to be a huge new public recreation reserve as well, incorporating 6 lakes, extensive plantings, wetlands, a network of scenic walkways and picnic spots for families, joggers, dog waters, and everything. Now, this is scheduled to open at the end of August. And yes, through the wetlands from Te Okarua Drive or the Greenbelt, passing through this recreation reserve will be that long-awaited bike track to the Kaituna Bridge, which will finally link Papamoa with the Western Bay's excellent cycle trails, Makatu, Paengaroa, O'Kerry Falls. And so, Steve, we're not going to hassle you about that anymore. You'll be glad to know. 8 weeks' time, that'll be opened, and possibly the other one. So 2 excellent Western Bay bike trails need to be linked together with a 35k safe, signed cycle route through the city. Huh. Are we up to it? Well, Jesus, we've got to be. Bike Tauranga has been invited to offer suggestions, and this we've done for Council's consideration. 2 routes, a fast one, straight through, and also a scenic one around Ferguson Park and the other places. Tourism BOP will then have our own 85k, or if you go down to O'Kerry Falls, 135 kilometre, what do we call it? The Bay of Plenty Coastal Cycleway to market. And we hope you encourage bikers to drive here or to fly into the airport, as we fly into Queenstown or Wanaka, assemble their bikes, and then it's only 15 minutes either to the Mount and the Totara Street you've agreed to make safe, or over the road bridge with the best city and harbour views, which only bikers and walkers can enjoy, by the way, to the Strand Central Business District for coffee or a meal. Or they can just hop on the trail and bike out to Omakroa, or they can bike out to Makatu for a coffee at either place. The marketing potential is unique for this, I believe, and a winner. The trail passing by attractive estuaries, ocean beaches, rivers, lakes, wetlands. What other town or city can offer that? And we have warm swimming, and we have 2 months more summer than the South Island, a month each side. Cafes, restaurants, the Mount, classic flyers, so much here. And so that's possible in a couple of months, folks. At the end of August, of course, barring tornadoes and the plague of frogs. So your commuter and recreation, cycle and walking friendly city is halfway there. And we ask you to keep it growing, because bike riding and commuting is growing exponentially, with those e-bikes eliminating the puff and grunt of hills and headwinds. And that's the difference between rowing your boat and getting an outboard on the back. Pretty So good. So to satisfy this demand and meet the market, please continue to fund more routes and getting more cars off the roads. And of course, every day throughout Tauranga, biking groups are out and about in the city, bringing big bucks to Tauranga cafes. For example, on Wednesdays, myself, a group go for their 2-hour cycle ride, and then 60 plus of us go to the Raft or the Chapel Street Cafe. And there's groups going out every day and doing that. Lastly, the matter of the Memorial Park to Strand Estuary Walkway. Following my impassioned plea at last year's submissions, which you may remember, it's clear, as Mayor Tenby wrote to me saying, council finances won't allow us for it to go forward this year. Of course, that's quite right. But I believe, it's my belief that with time passing, the community benefit for this level, carless and scenic route into town will become even greater for those inner city dwellers, which in a few years' time are going to be quite a number, and for commuters, students, disabled, mothers and kids, and those wishing to eat, drink, and help revitalize the CBD too. And with its seawall, prevent estuary properties from flooding and risking loss of insurance. Mr. Mayor, councillors, thank you for enhancing the city with the cycleways, commuter ways for walking and jogging, and bringing health and fitness to us here. Please continue to extend these. It's wonderful, and we're very grateful for everything that you've been doing to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for your submission. And on a personal note, I think you also deserve some credit for your advocacy and your well thought out and reasoned submissions over the years as well. So thank you for that, Chris.
Well, thank you.
Our final submitter before the break is Jill Brightwell, and I see Jill is there. Jill's got a very detailed submission starting on page 276 of your agenda. Thank you.
Sorry for putting so much detail into it, but I decided to try and have a good look at it. Okay. I assume, because the red light's on, I'm still go? Cool, okay. Thank you. I'm Jill Brightwell. Good morning. Firstly, I would like to say thank you to all the staff involved in the preparation of the various annual plan budgets that have been undertaken. Your work, especially during the COVID period, is appreciated. I've reviewed the data that's been prepared and would firstly like to make some suggestions for future documents that will be prepared for the long-term and annual plans, primarily focusing on the capital expenditure side. These are: indicate if a project is a multi-year, including the total number of years involved, what year has been funded in the annual plan, and what the total expected value of the project is to be. Indicate if a project is a carry forward from a previous year, including how close the project is to completion. Indicate how the project is to be funded, e.g. from outside sources such as developer contributions, NZTA, and what percentage is being sourced from them. My reasoning behind this is that as an outsider of the organisation, this information will assist me in knowing if I really need to focus on the project for potential deferment or challenge the work being proposed. If a project was being wholly funded from development contributions, then I would not be worried about having to fund through my rates. I would also like reports from officers for additional works to be actioned within a financial year to include full details of where the funding will be obtained and what will not be actioned as previously budgeted. I'll use Totra Street Cycleways as an example. What projects will not be undertaken as council must fund 10%, and I may have that percentage wrong, of the total value. This information should be included in the initial report so council is fully aware of the impacts on other aspects of the organisation. Within my submission, number 84, I have noted detailed comments focusing on the capital expenditure works and will not be covering each item during this speech as I would exceed my time limit. I will refer to the initial consultation document as version 1 and the latest document as version 2 when speaking about various items put forward for inclusion by officers. Here are some of the highlights that I found when comparing the two versions. Street lighting renewals and LED upgrades. In version 1, it was 4.3 million. In version 2, it has doubled to 9.6. I see that funding is available from NZTA, but would like to know, is the work going to be completed within this year? If Council's able to undertake the work to this value, why wasn't it requested initially? So I suggest that this be reduced to the original requested amount, reducing the capital expenditure by 4.5 million. Local roads pedestrian improvements. In version 1, $672,000. In version 2, now 2.8 million for the same 3 identified projects in the descriptions of the report. An increase of 2.2 million. Either your engineer's estimates have been significantly incorrect previously, or extra works have been added but not included in the comments description of this item. Again, I suggest this could be reduced to the original value, saving 2.2 million. I disagree strongly with the proposed development of Elizabeth Street at this time and suggest that it be included in the next LTP. While this will not fit in with the opening of Farmers, Elizabeth Street is a main feed into the CBD, and putting in gardens, reducing vehicle movements may not improve the increase of people into CBD. How many car parks are being lost with these works? I assume that farmers have had to make some development contributions for their development, and the delay of the works will not impact on that funding being available within the next few years, so approximately a saving of 11 million. Many of the projects appear to be related to the growth of Tauranga. However, it seems that a lot of works are for the possible future development. Do we have defined timeframes for these new works? If not, could we not defer the extension of roads or require current developers to construct at a slightly higher capacity level, recognising those additional costs through their development contributions? But as Council already makes reimbursements to developers for work undertaken to allow further intensification, that has not been considered or in the pipeline, I will assume that the works are paid back to Council by a percentage charge in addition to the standard development contributions charged to those future developers. I do support the funding of the renewals of the airport runway and upgrades to the elder housing portfolio to ensure that properties are warm for the residents, recognising that both activities are actually self-funding. The cemetery, and I'm not just picking on increases, by the way, the cemeteries seem to have reduced their capital budget from 41,000 to 3,000. I think that should be reinstated because development cemeteries is an ongoing requirement, and I think this value is extremely low, unless it's gone somewhere else that I couldn't find it. Operationally, a reduction has been made of approximately $5 million within the and I'm going to say personnel meaning salaries. What is a non-essential recruitment giving the $2 million saving? And I'm assuming that this has been taken from the main salaries line item. I'm thinking that, as an example, a member of staff who's going off on maternity leave should actually be replaced, because if they're not here, who is doing that role? Is it expected that the balance of the team will pick up that person's tasks on top of their own work? Or, and I don't really want to say this, is the position not really a full-time role and could be disestablished? Because that's actually not true. My version 1 submission supported recruitment in this situation. Also, within my version 1 submission, I noted the following values across the organisation for salaries areas. $66 million for salaries itself. There was a line with a credit of $1.8 million for salary savings. And then there was another line item with an addition of $1.9 million for position savings adjustment. Those last two items, I'm not actually sure what they mean. So it was actually going to cost Council another $100,000. And finally, there is $3.7 million for new FTEs projects. That's the name of the line item. What is that? Are they short-term positions? But FTE, to me, does not imply that. So that was another potential saving area. Also, the organisation combined consultancy budget that I managed to extract was $6.1 million. So could there be further trimming in that area? As an aside, when you decide to update the dog registration fees, I would like to suggest that a responsible dog owner fee be implemented, as this will be fairer across all dog owners. There should be no charge to apply for the reduced rate, as an owner who meets the criteria would not be a drain on the animal control department, as their animals are not impounded, complained about. A fee based upon age, which is what has been put forward, I consider discriminatory, and a senior citizen can apply for the responsible owner as well. And finally, I would like to remind Council that the ratepayers are not a cash cow or a golden goose. And while there are people within the city area that can afford increases, there are many who are on fixed incomes and do not get annual increases in their pensions or benefits. Sound bites that make the media of, if you don't like it, leave, or if this was a business, it would be insolvent, are not helpful or conducive to creating the city that we are proud of. They give the naysayers fodder to attack and demoralise good staff, who I am sure there are plenty of. But are these people now proud to say they work for TCC? I know I did when I worked here. Please think about those who are not able to stand up for themselves when setting this year's budget. Take a breath and give us a chance to start afresh. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. We've got time for one question. Councillor Clout.
Thank you very much, Jill, and it was very comprehensive. And I've got one question. It doesn't relate to the content of your submission, but I really have to ask you, how many hours did you spend putting your submission together? If you don't mind me asking, because it's very comprehensive and I applaud you.
With COVID, I'm now unemployed, so I had lots of time, which is why I actually decided I moved back here. I'm born and bred here in Tauranga, but I've been away for a few years. I did the OE and, you know, those things. So 2 years ago we came home and I thought, no, this is actually important to me. And as I said in my speech, I worked here for TCC and I actually was really proud. But what I'm hearing and seeing through social media is actually really starting to annoy me, because it's like everybody's out to attack council. Generally, everybody actually cares. But so I know we have to do this. We've got an LTP coming back. So some of the stuff that's being put forward, maybe we can wait and actually plan that big picture.
Thank you. I look forward to your submission to the LTP.
Hey, thank you, Jill. And colleagues, look, we will break now. Can I please have you back in the chamber at 1:10 sharp? Sorry, 11:10. Yes, I can. You'll be here? Okay. Make that 11:10. Yeah, go for it. Yep, that's when our next submitter is due to speak, so make the most of it. After the morning tea break is David White from Water Safety Bay of Plenty. David and Co, thank you for coming and submitting to us this morning. Water Safety Bay of Plenty submission is on page 803 of our agenda. We've got 10 minutes allocated, which you can use as you see fit, but if you do finish early, then we may have some questions for you.
Yep, sure.
Thank you.
I try and keep it less than 7 minutes. Oh yeah, the presentation. There should be a presentation. Oh, is it on here? Oh, that's right. Yeah. Ah, okay. Okay, cool. All right, kia ora everyone. My name is Dave White. I am the Regional Water Safety Strategy Manager for the Bay of Plenty. Just call me Dave. And next to me is my colleague from Sport Bay of Plenty, Catherine. I'll explain the situation in a second. So I promise this isn't a long presentation. It just helps keep me on track. So I don't keep you guys here all day. So we have a water safety strategy put into place over the last 18 months by Water Safety New Zealand. Hopefully you guys have all heard of it. Within that strategy are 7 priorities which are listed in front of you there, so I'll just quickly go through them. There's the full rollout of the Water Skills for Life program, working with Māori, the Māori community in terms of water safety, Coast Guard education and memberships, a sustained investment in initiatives that are aimed at changing the attitudes and behaviours that lead to drownings, stakeholder collaboration, male-specific water safety messages, and signage. So, what was it? So that handsome chap in the middle is me, and above me is the Water Safety Bay of Plenty governance group, which consists of the members on the right-hand side there, of which one is Catherine. And then I work alongside all the industry stakeholders, so Surf Life Saving, Water Safety New Zealand, Coast Guard, councils, yada, yada, yada. So I was chosen for the role, well, I think so, because of my extensive background in the water sector. So I was an ex-New Zealand swimmer. I've got 16 years as a lifeguard at Piha Beach. I'm a qualified diver, and I pretty much spend all my leisure time in, on, or around the water. So the purpose of this role is to really push for an inter-organisation collaboration. Historically, the organisations, there's been a bit of a disconnect, so everyone kind of focuses on their specific area. My job is to essentially bring everyone to the table and encourage that collaboration and sharing of information. The easiest way to describe my role is a balcony view of the bay. So I sit here and I overlook the Bay of Plenty, see what water safety initiatives are going on around the bay, and then relay back to the governance group my suggestions around what's working, what's not, what could be done better, priority areas and other areas of opportunity. I also provide assistance to providers such as swim schools and anyone else that has an interest in water safety. And I am trying to promote consistent messaging across the whole bay. That includes boating, beaches, everything. For the next 12 months, thanks to old mate COVID, we're a little bit behind, but we've got a full-on 12 months. So in front of you are my key initiatives for the next 12 months. As I mentioned before, the first one is Water Skills for Life. In case some of you guys don't really know what that is, it's a program how do I explain it? It's like teaching kids to swim, but also vital water safety messages such as, or water safety skills, sorry, such as diving to the bottom of the pool, safely entering and exiting, using things like a bucket as a flotation device, and things like that. So we want to fully roll that out to all schools throughout the entire Bay of Plenty. Big project, so it's an ongoing thing. It won't be done in the next 6 months, for example. Māori are still overrepresented in the Bay of Plenty as a whole in the drowning statistics, so that's a priority. It's not so much a priority in specifically in Tauranga. Tauranga tends to be Caucasian males over the age of 45. We've got, I'm only 33, I'm not over 45. And then we've got the Surfers Rescue Program, which essentially goes around and trains local surfers how to conduct rescues on their board and basic first aid. Signage is a big project that's starting to gain momentum. We're going to standardise all signage throughout the Bay of Plenty to international standards, and once it's been proved to be successful in the Bay of Plenty, they're going to roll it out nationally. Water Safety Month is coming up in October, so my plan is to have providers from all around the Bay hosting different events, workshops, and just making it a full-on month for the community. Coast Guard memberships, it's estimated that only around 5% of Bay of Plenty boaties have memberships, which is pretty appalling. So in the next 12 months, we're trying to boost that up to 15-20% at least. Targeted messages, so I don't believe in painting everyone with the same brush, so our water safety messages are going to be very specific and targeted to each demographic. And then number 7 is just general support to providers. We're trying to encourage providers to keep pushing forward in the water safety space. And that's me. That was 5 minutes, 48 seconds.
Thank you, Dave. Do you have anything to add, Catherine?
No, so I guess the water safety role, so Dave sits within Sport Bay of Plenty, so which is great, so he can leverage off our, our stakeholders that we already have connections with the schools and different stakeholders, so it's kind of a really good, it's a valuable relationship, so yeah, and like Dave said, it's really important to, I guess, have a consistent approach across the Bay of Plenty, get the stakeholders collaborating together, so that, yeah, you can get greater impact if everybody's working together, I guess, for the same cause, so yeah.
Any questions, colleagues? Councillor Baldock, then Mayor Powell.
Thanks, Dave and Catherine. I think we may have contributed to this a year or so ago. But,
yes, you did. Sorry, yeah. Thank you very much for your...
That's all right. I didn't say it for that reason, but
yeah, no.
As a Caucasian male over 45, just the ad on TV with the guy with the fish ad, but the guy getting his swim lessons with his daughter running out brings a tear to my eye just about every time I see it, because the problem in our region, as I'm sure you know, is the people who don't learn to swim when they're kids are just about lost forever. And that's why I was supporting the funding before. Can you speak to that issue? Are we making progress with the number of kids here that surrounded by water that still don't know the basic swimming skills when they get to be
that's where the Water Skills for Life program comes in. So when you can be the best swimmer in the world, but when an accident happens, your swimming ability becomes irrelevant. So the Water Skills for Life program aims at teaching them different skills that they can, ingrains it in the back of their mind so that 10, 15 years later, if they fall out of a boat, they remember that, hey, you can use a bucket upside down as a flotation device and things like that. So that's the idea behind that program, and we are making progress with it. It is a very pricey program, so I'm working with Swimming New Zealand to see how we can get more bang for our buck and get more kids through it every term.
And I think Dave's role, I guess, is to have the oversight to see who's missing out or where the gaps are. So it's a little bit sporadic at the moment what kids are getting at, depending what schools they're at. So we want to have that kind of oversight and make sure where are the gaps, how can we advocate, or what are the barriers that those kids aren't getting at, and make sure it is consistent. Yeah.
That's the Water Skills for Life, but even better if they can actually swim. If there's no bucket around, they can get there.
Swimming's definitely important, but yeah.
And that's part of it. They'll learn to swim as part of that Water Skills for Life. Yeah.
Mayor Powell.
Chair. Dave and Catherine, thanks for your presentation. Just a couple of things, just questions of clarification really. The age 45 plus males is because we're all 12 foot tall and bulletproof, is that right? And we think we've got abilities above our actual physical levels?
Sorry. Boating in Tauranga tends to be the big thing, and yeah.
That was my second question. Are we a low demographic of membership to Coast Guard? I think it was 5%, as I recall from your slide,
Yeah.
which seemed to be very low.
Yeah, it is quite low. To be honest, I'm not sure what it is nationally, but I definitely want to, because the membership's only, I think, from memory, $120, $130 a year, and it's a $3,000 call out if you don't have it. So I just, we're really trying to tell people that, yeah.
Quick one you can sneak in there, Councillor Robson.
Yeah, I think the water safety thing's a bit like middle-aged men and motorbikes. They have a pretty appalling record there as well. If I come back to, as a motorcyclist, if I come back to an earlier submission that was made around community pools, do you have a view on that? There was a submission made earlier around we should be focusing more on community pools rather than destination aquatic facilities. Do you have a view on that? Because I think it goes to...
Yeah, actually, we listened into that submission with Cheryl. So, yeah, absolutely, we would endorse what she was saying, that it needs to be affordable for children to be able to access those lessons. So, yes, we definitely agree with her that price shouldn't be a barrier for every child to be able to learn to swim. Yeah.
Just joining the dots. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very Put my microphone on. Thank you very much, Dave and Catherine, for the submission. We'll be deliberating on the budget in a week and a bit's time. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Colleagues, our next submission is on page 305 of our agenda, and it's David Cavett and Sandra Johnson from the Wairaki Community Centre Trust. Thank you for making the journey from Papamoa today. You've got 10 minutes allocated, and you can use that time as you wish, but if you do finish a little earlier, then some of my colleagues may have a question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning all. My name is Brian Cavett. I don't think Steve got that quite right.
Well, I withdraw and apologise.
That's
Brian.
quite all right. And I am the chair of the Wairaki Community Centre Trust, and alongside me here is Sandra Johnson, one of the other members of the trust. We are a long-standing trust. Those of you who have been on council for on previous terms will be well aware that we have presented here before, but some of you are new to council. We've been a trust since 2005, and the concern that we have is the establishment of some sort of a community centre is the word we're using down in Papamoa East. There is a lot of housing that has happened down there, and there are no facilities whatsoever. There is no sort of centre that people can come to do their own thing as local people. There is no place that people can rent out, and so that social facilities can be there. And so we are looking to provide, or we're asking that there be provision of accommodation for local community groups, public sector organisations, the residents themselves when they want to hold a do. And we are simply concerned for really the social needs of people, all their health needs. At the moment they have to travel, for some, as much as 14 kilometres. In fact, most of them would have to travel 14 kilometres up to the Owens Place area to get to anywhere. And that's fine if you've got plenty of money and plenty of transport, but many of them don't, and then there's all the language facility problem, etc. and etc. So we represent all the major Christian churches in Papamoa. That is who we are. This has been set up from within the churches, but you will hear that our concern is the people and all their social needs and such like. So that's probably enough of an introduction from me. Sandra has come with some statistics and case studies, and she would like to share them with you.
Thanks, Brian. Tēnā koutou katoa. As Brian said, I'm Sandra. I'm the minister at the Papamoa East Anglican Church. We work out of a medical centre. We don't have a flash building. We have an old physiotherapist room, which is not very big, to say the least. Just so you know a little bit about my background, apart from being on the trust for the last 11 years, my background is in trauma psychology. I led the trauma teams into Christchurch through the earthquakes, into Kaikoura and Wellington, and back to Christchurch after the shooting. So my eye very quickly goes to people who are in trouble, particularly with any psychological impact. This is the third time I've been privileged to present on behalf of the Trust to the Tauranga City Council. And with every passing year, the needs out in that area are growing. At present, there are pockets of places where people can go, but they are pockets. There's no communal centre. The Papamoa Library is fantastic, but it's booked up a year ahead. So getting anything into place in there is a bit of a mission. It feels as though Papamoa has no communal heart, and that's a worry. I picked up the stats from the Papamoa Family Services just to give you an idea of the sorts of needs that are starting to show up very rapidly and increasing throughout Papamoa East. The Papamoa Family Service are located on Hertford Avenue. That's a long way from Papamoa East, and even so, I got their latest stats. So from the 1st of April last year to the 31st of March this year, 8,615 people sought help. And that help, 3,619 of those had headings such as loneliness, isolation, victims of violence. Some were overwhelmed with grief from breakups or from bereavements. 935 people were new to the area and just did not know where to go to find company. It doesn't include those who needed professional counselling. That was a separate statistic altogether. 766 people were desperate for budgeting help. The rents are high in Papamoa East. It concerns me greatly that we know there's a rent freeze on, but what's going to happen when that comes off? Because landlords are going to be looking to actually get some return. And then they gave me the stats for this year, 1 April to the 23rd of June, 392 people over the 3 months. And that was during lockdown. So most of that was over the telephone. There's a surge, an absolute surge in requests for psychological help from that middle income bracket where everything that comes in goes out because the mortgages are great and the rents are high. Now we've got the impact of COVID-19 where people have lost work, and that's added to the burden out there. The community nurses gave me a case study of an Asian family with a young child with significant learning problems. His dad is able to get to work and so gets a bit of respite. Mum, whose English is really limited, told me that she would love to have somewhere near to home to go where she could meet other mums without having to travel too far. Spoke to the regional manager of English language partners, who will be known to a number of counsellors. They currently use the library, if they can get in there, and they book a year ahead. They would really like to run classes in Papamoa East where there's an absolute need, and they would use a facility if it was there. We respectfully want to acknowledge the burdens that we know council carries around financial needs. But the Trust are asking you to consider forming a subcommittee to work alongside of Papamoa East to make this happen. Really and truly, the years that go by, and we know that it was on a plan for 10 years, then it was on a plan for 5 years, then it disappeared. Papamoa is not going to stop growing. And the people who come in here are going to get more and more desperate as the years go by. So I want to leave you with 2 thoughts from wise people. The first is a Māori proverb which says, "Hei whiringa takehahi, tā huna huna ke whiringa ngāti kauraranga kamau." And it says, If you plait one thread at a time, the ends will fragment. If you weave them together, they will hold. And some of you might know the works of Maya Angelou. She says, people won't remember what you said, they won't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, to feel, one has to have a heart. Papamoa needs a heart. It needs a community centre. Kia ora.
Thank you, Sandra and David. I've got a question from Councillor Baldock.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, David and Sandra, for that presentation. You mentioned that you're a conglomerate or a coalition of Christian churches out there. And sometimes a community centre can function affiliated with a church centre. Not ideally for everybody, but they can work. But it becomes, it's increasingly more difficult for churches to build in new areas. And I wanted to ask you, are you aware of any churches planning to build out Papamoa East and are having trouble with the planning constraints? Because it's almost impossible, I think.
Yes, to say the least. You need to talk to my bishop about that, and his language might not be too nice. But the reality is it's cost as well. The sections out there are really small, which means we'd be looking at a double section. We would anyway for a community centre, because it's just, they're pocket handkerchiefs. You wouldn't get much on there. The Catholics are building their school, and they always build their school before they build their church. So I suspect they will be looking to build their church in and around their school. We're aware the Baptists have bought land there, but they've done nothing with it at this point in time. As I said, we work out of a medical centre because we neither have the money or the section to build on right now. But, the churches are not looking to find a centre just so they can use it. This is about the people in Papamoa. I've lost track of the number of times I've given out food parcels and got desperate calls late at night or early hours of the morning from people who just do not know where to turn. They find a phone number, see where we're located, and ring. I don't know whether that answers your question, Councillor, but the reality is a lot of it's around cost.
Thank you, Brian and Sandra. The council will be deliberating on the budget in a week and a bit's time, and I'll feed back to you personally the decision of the council. So thank you for coming in and submitting.
Thank you very
this
much.
morning. Our next submitter colleagues is a man who's familiar to us, Mr. Brian Berry from Downtown Tauranga. Downtown Tauranga's submission is on page 821 of our agenda, and I'll let you get straight into it. Brian, you're familiar with the process.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wandering down here this morning, it's freezing cold, and I guess the CBD or city centre's in a bit of a winter of discontent at the moment and has been for the last 2 or 3 years. So my presumption is that you've taken the time to read our submission, so I'm not going to regurgitate that now. And the focus of our submission to council is to obtain substantive support to support a city centre that is in crisis at present and has been for some time. We all know that in the last 3 years the Tauranga CBD retail environment has been very challenging with accessibility issues, paid roadside parking, several seismic strengthening projects, redevelopments and council streetscaping projects, and along with a proliferation of and expansion of suburban shopping malls and internet trading, times have been very tough for anyone in a public-facing business in the CBD. We all know that the end game is great and that the CBD is in a transition phase, but really you're, apart from farmers coming on online, the retail part of that coming online in the middle of next year, anything else is a slow burn, and we're really looking sort of 4 or 5 years down the track. In the interim, we have a major problem, as in addition to the pressures associated with businesses not being able to operate under COVID-19, post going to level 1, national brand retailers are or intend to leaving the CBD. examples of ones that have already left: Michael Hill and Just Jeans, NES, all out of Devonport Road. Moochie has just exited from their original New Zealand store, and Hellenstein Brothers and Glassons will be out by the end of July. So Devonport Road is taking an absolute hit at the moment, and there's possibly one other quite established national retail brand that is also going to exit from Devonport Road, as I understand it. So I guess the point I want to make is that now is not the time really to be increasing the fixed costs for businesses operating within the CBD, who obviously Main Street Tauranga represents. And so we strongly oppose the increase in the commercial rates differential, and would like council to maintain the uniform annual general charge at current levels. There is perhaps a misconstrued perception out there that because a commercial property is of high value, that it's more affordable, that rates increases are more affordable. But as we all know, hopefully the owners of those buildings pass on the costs of rates and insurance and other costs to the tenants that occupy their tenancies within their properties. So it's those businesses that are going to bear the brunt of increases in rates, and so with them being totally under pressure at the moment, and with a really uncertain economic future, we really strongly oppose increasing the rates burden on commercial properties. As far as transportation affiliated services are, another item in our submission, we strongly support the continued drive for free buses for the CBD, and I know that's been trialled recently, and there's a bit of a campaign at the moment to increase the take-up of that opportunity. The parking always raises its head, unfortunately, and I would encourage council, given the current circumstances and the circumstances that the CBD has been facing over the last 2 to 3 years, and what we're looking ahead at, to consider free parking for a limited period, like 2 or 3 hours, and then going to paid parking after that, or move on. So that is an option. The competitor products, i.e. being the suburban shopping centres, obviously have free parking, and we could go on ad nauseum about that, but basically it's one of the key detractors from coming to the CBD as far as the general populace is concerned. And we also therefore strongly oppose any increases in car parking charges without thought to just the comments that I've just made. As far as Activate Spaces are concerned, that was gaining momentum just before the COVID-19 lockdown, and we really once again encourage council to continue funding that until the CBD has emerged from the current troubling times. As far as the cruise ship shuttle service is concerned, we know that that has been very successful in the past, and in the 2018-2019 shoulder season, 23,000 plus passengers came into the CBD. We know it's reliant on basically having the cruise ship shuttle buses based on the port itself, but we have worked more closely with council and the port and Tourism Bay of Plenty over the season just finished to try and solve some of these issues. So I would once again encourage and strongly advocate for supporting the ongoing level of funding for the cruise ship shuttle service. As far as Elizabeth Street upgrade is concerned, we also strongly support that work to be done. We don't really want to see a job half done as far as the farmers' development is concerned, and we think that development is going to be the catalyst for other major mixed-use developments that will occur within the CBD or city centre, and the farmers' development encapsulates that end of the CBD, and will actually give a sense of there actually being a city centre within a defined boundary, and the defined boundary being basically the farmers' development, the university, and what's happening down this end of the Strand. So I think the whole vibe is going to change following the completion of that development, and hopefully with other substantial mixed-use developments that might be carried out due to the success of the farmers' development. Events funding framework. We obviously strongly support funding of events that occur in the CBD or city centre, and there has been, a reluctance to fund these because they're not necessarily supporting the rest of the city, but we would disagree with that and saying that the events held in the CBD or city centre actually have wider economic benefits and bring also wellbeing benefits to those in the community who can come in and experience whatever event is on, and so we think that reflects the fact that the city centre or CBD is basically a community asset and not just a asset which is for the benefit of those businesses and people that live within it. So I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has a question.
We have time for one question, colleagues. Councillor Baldock.
The annual New Year's Eve Mayor's Barbecue and Fireworks display was going to be axed, but we reinstated, and we're asking for feedback on that. You haven't touched on that, I don't think.
No.
Can you comment?
Yep, certainly. We strongly support that event happening. It's a very popular event, and it's one that can be seen from the wider community, and I think we would strongly support that, and are very pleased if that decision has been reversed. Yep.
Thank you, Brian, for coming in and representing the views of Downtown Tauranga. We'll be deliberating in a couple of weeks and adoption of the annual plan before the end of the month. So thank you. Colleagues, our next submitter is Joe Coughlin, coming in via Zoom or Skype, as the case may be. Joe's submission is on page 1251 of your agenda. And can I say well done to our governance staff for loading those up onto Stella. Well done, mammoth effort, thank you. 1251. Over to you, Joe. Hi, I'm Steve. I'm chairing over here somewhere in your visual range. And the format is you've got 10 minutes to use as you wish, but if you do finish a little early, my colleagues may have some questions for you. So over to you in your presentation. Thank you. You're just on mute there, Joe.
Oh, right, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, congratulations for getting to, the 1000th page to actually read this submission if you've actually got there. I'll take it as read. Basically, I'm the chair of the New Zealand Chinese Language Week, and this is a week that was set up in 2015. Actually, the vision of Raymond Hull, who's currently an MP at the moment, and the idea really was that, the New Zealand-China relationship has grown really exponentially over the last 5 years, and yet so many New Zealanders still just don't really have a very good understanding or appreciation, or really had come into any contact with, I suppose, Chinese language and culture. And, you know, that does seem a little bit out of step with the fact that now China is basically our largest trading partner. And certainly at the local government level, and I was a councillor myself for 9 years on Wellington City Council, so I do appreciate that at local government level there's been quite a lot of initiatives in terms of sister city relationships, and more recently the New Zealand-China Mayoral Forum, to address this, and obviously also too a huge number of delegations that have gone from New Zealand to China and the other way to try and increase understanding. But certainly in terms of the language, the idea is that what better way to really understand more about a culture than through a language. And in our schools, you know, we're still very underrepresented in the number of schools that are teaching Mandarin. And certainly I think there's still a lot more children in New Zealand learning French. So this was really an initiative that was brought about to try and, I guess, shine a light for a week of the year on Chinese language and culture, and do it in a fun way, in a Kiwi-led way, through schools and predominantly, and also using councils and local government as a channel, essentially because you've got, you know, that current understanding anyway of the importance of the relationship, but also a network through the country and lots of public spaces and libraries and things like that, which can be useful in terms of being able to hold events and activities. The issue that we've got with the Language Week is that it seems to be getting more popular every year. And last year we had over 300 events around New Zealand, and you know, quite a huge social media presence, a number of different councils, mayors, politicians, businesses, schools, all sorts of people from across the communities around New Zealand coming on board. But we're trying to establish a sustainable funding model for it. And so that is why I'm going out to every council in New Zealand to see what the feedback is and the uptake would be around a contribution. So that's why I'm here today. You know, we do a lot of really interesting programs. We have a Mandarin Superstars program where we go out and find, you know, 15 or so really interesting people throughout the country who have gone on a particular Mandarin language learning journey. They're often, well, actually last year we had a winemaker in the mix. We've had a lot of school children, just business owners, different people from across the community who can tell their story, and then we profile that through social media and through our website. We have youth ambassadors. We produce a trilingual book each year. I don't know if you can see it, in Māori and Mandarin. This one's called The Marae Visit, and we send these out all over the country to schools and libraries. And it's quite a nice opportunity for a local politician or mayor to do a reading at the library with some local children. We have a number of different stakeholder events, and essentially what I'm looking for really is support from the council in terms of being able to get on board with some of the other activities like the 5 Days, 5 Phrases challenge that we have, and just getting the mayor and the leadership really embracing the concept through the week, and then pushing that down through the offices and the across the community. And a liaison person at the council that we can work with to help leverage activities locally, and if possible a little bit of financial support. So look, I'm really happy to take questions. You've got the paper, and thank you very much for your time and for giving me the opportunity to present to you today.
Thank you, Joe. We've got a question from Mayor Powell.
Thank you, Chair. Joe, thank you. Congratulations on this. When are the invitations issued to go and read to the children? Are they formalised, or is it just an ad hoc process?
I mean, we're just basically a project management team of about 3, and so what we do is we go out and say to councils across the country, to businesses, to organisations, you know, here's a platform. This is what we can help you with. Sometime during this week, it might be really good if you were able to initiate an activity or an event at your end. But we can provide you with the resource for the books. We can provide you with support through social media, all that kind of thing. So we don't specifically go around the country organising every event ourselves, but we go out through MailChimp. Actually, we'll be putting a MailChimp out this week to basically just remind people that the week is coming, and to sing out really for local, for liaison people and whatnot to come back to us and to tell us what they might be doing in their local communities.
Great, Joe. Understand. Thank you very much.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So last year, for example, a number of mayors actually did videos, pre-recorded videos, and we put those on the website. In fact, the Prime Minister did, the Leader of the Opposition, all sorts of different people, really just saying, look, this is an exciting week. Maybe even doing the 5 days, 5 phrases challenge, just putting that challenge out to their organisations, that type of thing.
Yep, understand. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. And colleagues, the video presentation will be emailed to you in your inbox for you to have a look at. So thank you, Joe, for the presentation. And we'll be deliberating over the next couple of weeks, and we'll respond back to you. But thank you for Skyping in.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Colleagues, our next submitter is Pascal. Pascal from the Venture Centre. I see you there at the back. Come up to the table here. Colleagues, Pascal's submission is on page 1196. You have 10 minutes to use as you see fit, but if you do finish early, we may have some questions for you. Thank you.
Just getting used to the tech. Kia ora tātou katoa. Ko Pascal Ibu-Perron-Tene. I realize I'm one of 23 people speaking with you all today. So I also realize that I might be between you and lunch, so I'm going to try to keep it as quick as possible. Yes, please. I thank you for your commitment to the city, to the growth of our region, and to this consultation process. I come before you today to speak about entrepreneurship and why it takes a village to raise a startup business. Thank you for the opportunity to present Venture Centre. I'm one of the co-founders. Venture Centre exists to support Tauranga's entrepreneurs at their idea stage, be they social impact pioneers or for-profit entrepreneurs or a hybrid of both. In plain English, as much as I can, it means supporting the people in our community who have an idea that they want to pursue, sometimes for their own benefit, but actually most of the time for the benefit of our people and our planet. They see and live the problems, have the ideas, but maybe not the business skills, the means or networks to take their ideas off the page, get past go, and underway with them. There are lots of these everyday yet extraordinary people around us. Some are new to Tauranga, others are deeply established in our communities, all looking for solutions to benefit our own local community. We've supported 2,500 of them making their way since we started in 2014. This is why venture centers flourished and become so pivotal, not only to individuals' success, but also to our city's collective success. When the people who come to us feel supported, they win and we all win. With COVID-19, we now have a whole new uplift in demand with people losing their jobs or looking for their what next. They are grappling with the personal and social disruptions around them. They want to make a change for good. COVID has dialed up demand from sectors that have traditionally relied on other sources of funding. They are looking to models like social enterprise to explore new revenue streams. But as everyone in this room knows, and I know many of you are ideators, crusaders, and champions for small business. Having a good idea is one thing, but it's quite another to take that idea and turn it into something tangible. It isn't an easy journey, not least if you're trying to do it on your own. That's why we're here. Venture Center provides a safe and supportive environment where people can tap into our expertise and networks, shape their idea, and maybe even park it. We do it in a way where their well-being and resilience are respected and enhanced. Demand for our services has increased substantially. We've enlisted the guidance and support of an advisory council last year to guide us into our transition to charitable status. Darryl French is here today with me as chair of this council. Here are Darryl. In 2014, we opened the doors to a co-working space, Base Station, on Durham Street, and started offering events, programs, mentoring, and we've literally been running ever since. Over the past 6 years, I can honestly say that the demand hasn't stopped. Not only with direct inquiry from people and organizations looking for assistance, but also from business support organizations like Chamber of Commerce and Priority One. They regularly have ideas, people reach out to them, but they quickly establish that they are too early in their journey and thus send them to us. Venture Center has also been representing Tauranga at national level, collaborating with other organizations like ours that look like us and deliver community-led entrepreneurship support. So what is it today? Every day we're supporting locals through a combination of one-on-one tailored support, events, programs, and networking opportunities. All these through a digital enablement lens. Some of our work you may be familiar with, like Young Enterprise Scheme, Co-Starters, Startup Weekend, Powering On. Some you won't have heard of, like our regular office hours or angel drop-in clinics, where people can come in for a free hour of advice from local lawyers, local accountants, local investors. It's happening every week, several times a week in this city, because our local experts care and give time to give back. Hence why I'm in front of you today, because we need you to know about us and to care too. I invite Tauranga City Council to partner with us and support entrepreneurship as an essential tool for community development. Now you know we exist and what we do. We equip people with the essential skills and confidence to start their own venture and support those new to it. Entrepreneurship is big news. It's hugely relevant in the current environment, and it's on the agenda of most, if not all, councils in New Zealand. Quite simply, we don't want to see Tauranga left behind. Hence our submission to you to help Venture Center continue to stimulate the creation of early stage businesses. Venture Centers established a good relationship with Priority One, with the Powering On program. We are working with them on a range of specific projects. We are also in support of extra funding to Priority One in the area of economic development. But this application sits outside of that, as we are seeking operational funding to allow us to go forth. In terms of impact for your spend, we're excited to be the front door and see the ideas are out there in our community, and to help people explore these in a safe harbor. how locals can solve local problems, contribute to national outcomes, and help overcome global challenges too. For our city to have a broad base of businesses tomorrow, it's important that we put money into helping systematically those who stand in the starting blocks today. So, let's not forget about the startup people, the techpreneurs, but also the mompreneurs, the socialpreneurs, the teenpreneurs, the poppreneurs, the artpreneurs, and all the doers innovating in backyards, schoolyards, sheds, and community centers all over the city for the good of all of us. Thank you for listening. Kia ora. If you have any question, I'm glad I've beat the clock. So.
Thank you, Pascal and Daryl. I've got a question from Councillor Clout.
Kia ora, Kevin.
Kia ora and bonjour, Pascal. And Daryl, thanks for coming. Can you explain why you've converted into a charitable organisation rather than, I presume you were a company before? And thank you.
Thank you. I'll hand over to Daryl because he stepped up to help us do that.
Yes, for those that don't know me, I chair a number of boards of small businesses around town. I looked at what the Venture Centre was doing, the amount of programs they had and what they had to offer, and we could simply see that escalating. So we put together a council, advisory council, very similar to what we did with Enterprise Angels 10 years ago, because we saw the demand, and it really is that the demand was already growing before COVID-19, and now it's just really escalated. So we've had to move from a bootstrap organisation to a charitable organisation so we could access some funding to enable us to continue. We have a number of funding sources, but we felt this was a good time to be front and centre for the council.
Thank you.
Very quickly, Councillor Robson.
Yeah, 15 seconds. We had a recent submission earlier this morning from Athena House,
yes,
which gave us a breakdown of their finances. Could you do the same?
Yes, we could give you a breakdown of our finances.
That would be helpful, thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you for the submission today, and we'll be deliberating over the next couple of weeks, and we will get back to you with our decision. So thank you very much for presenting. Appreciate it. Thank you. Colleagues, our next submitter is Sophie Evans, who is speaking in support of the incubator's submission. Welcome, Sophie. The submission is on page 724 of your agenda. You've got 10 minutes to use as you wish, and if you do finish a little early, we may have some questions for you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Sophie Evans and I'm a local ceramicist, studying through Otago Polytechnic and travelling to Waikato Society of Potters. The historic village, for me, is the definition of community. It's where creatives can validate their ideas, concepts and artwork. The village is a place to learn and create. But better, it has working fashion designers, carvers, weavers, painters, sculptors, ceramicists, poets and musicians. I don't know if anyone here has visited Arrowtown, but historic village to me is like a little Arrowtown. It has huge potential. So the source of the artists within the historic village are amazing, and you've got all that potential right there. If you were to travel to another city and source all those different artists, you would be zigzagging throughout the whole city, and you wouldn't be in one location seeing them working and doing their thing. What a great destination to support that is already up and running while our city is going through times of construction and rejuvenation. The events that are run at the historic village are so important. Quite often they are free or gold coin donation. It's so important now more than ever in recovery mode from COVID that we have a destination for families and people on a budget. Very much so for the morale of our city and our families of Tauranga. Everyone needs something to look forward to, and this is what the incubator organise: gigs, live music, workshops and events. Now I know there are numerous events in Tauranga for people to attend, if they are financially able, where there's lots of getting dressed up, sipping on champagne and feeling special. This, for me, creates quite a divide and inequality, and maybe a little resentment. When I look at my photos from travelling, I'm standing next to character buildings full of history and beautiful stories, next to amazing sculptures, beside beautiful paintings, listening to talented people busking. All of this is found down at our little village. This is what gives cities a soul, a buzz, and something not to be underestimated or written off within a future plan. We have a creative hub at the historic village which can nurture and improve mental health through workshops, working with clay, painting and other creative activities, making something tangible that makes people feel good. I think COVID put a huge emphasis on the value of art. All our baking, landscaping, interior design, listening to music, photography, watching our favourite actors, dressing up in weird outfits, doing press-ups. Maybe that was just me. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I encourage you all to pop down to the village and grab a cup of coffee, have a chat to the incubator team about their future plans. Thank you.
Thank you for your submission, Sophie. Are there any questions? Councillor Clout.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for coming in and supporting the incubator's proposals. So I understand that they're keen to develop a like a pottery classroom and a kiln, etc.
Yeah.
And that presumably would find favour with you being a ceramicist. Is that what you call yourself?
It is what I call myself. Yeah. And so there aren't facilities within Tauranga at the moment. There are no kiln facilities, like there's the Bethlehem Potters, but there's very small and very limited space. If you look sort of over at Waikato, they have huge art facilities that blows our art facilities out of the water, I've got to say. It's a bit embarrassing.
Any further questions? No? No, thank you, Sophie.
Thank you.
We'll be deliberating over the next couple of weeks,
Thank
and we'll get back to the incubator on what our decision is. Thank you. Our next submitter needs no introduction. Phil Green. Come on up, Phil. G'day. How you going? Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you. You know our processes and procedures, so I'll hand straight over to you.
Thank you, Chair Steve, Mayor Temby, councillors, Marty. Right. Actually, an interesting thing this morning, I was reading over breakfast the Bay of Plenty Times, the big cover spread. So well done. This is something which we've probably been trying to get hold of for probably 20 years, so it's finally going to happen. Hopefully I'm around in 70 years' time, which I don't think so, to see it actually finished and finalised. I've added a few things to my original submissions, just a couple of sentences and lines, just to make it easier to read more than anything. What I talk about is the flesh, that, or at least the detail that fills in the body of Tauranga City, and things that I notice and observe in my daily life as a professional, and also just as a ratepayer driving around the city. And as I say here in the opening sentence, the items mentioned are probably things that I've actually discussed and touched on in previous reports over the years. And so basically, I'll read it through it anyway. But whilst we're all from diverse backgrounds, I think we all agree that this could be an exciting time for the commercial centres and adjacent city living zones in a post-COVID future if we are smart, leave behind a lot of the baggage and archaic thinking to date, and look at the future Tauranga City and say this is what we desire and this is how we will get there. A local authority has a responsibility to ensure its citizens feel a connection with and take pride in any new initiative or project it undertakes. We see that council managers and staff have spent extensive hours obtaining feedback from the ratepayer groups and individuals, have spent substantial money on the report and the presentation, but we still feel that the essential element of what a city should be about has been missed in lieu of persistent cost adjustments and the cutting out of good things that a ratepayer sees as tangible items that they interact with day and night. We are not seeing vision, but rather the same tired old ideas and decision making. You don't have to keep pouring money down the drain. Sometimes the potted plant is more relevant than an extra car park or the constant change to roading layouts. Activation of social aspects are lost in the economics of the report and in what appears to be excessive necessities of showy projects that will add little to the vitality of people living in the city. In fact, we would go so far as to say that the decision-making in the report is reminiscent of past decades and not an innovative, inspiring or futuristic approach that shows expenditure relating to a future city plan. These items I'm now going on to are items that I think probably we should be looking at as relevant for this growing city and for the future of it. A city manager of mobility innovation. This was also basically touched on in the UFT report that I read about this morning. Interlinking suburbs directly, major hub-only links, water hub links, that's ferries and water taxis, reserves to be for general public, not commuter parking. And if you look at Memorial Park, that's one site that is already affected by it. Layout of council-generated disabled car parks around the city do not generally comply with the codes that we all have to apply for as consultants. General road markings not suitable or legible and sometimes misleading. And number 2, forward plan infrastructure. Stop this knee-jerk reaction and start actually forward thinking. What does this city look like in the future, 50 to 80 years? Look to raise the rates as part of the answer. Yes, stop keeping them so low that you get re-elected in 3 years. And yes, you do need to adjust levels of rise for the next 12 months because of COVID. City maintenance contracts. Definitely not working. All areas in the city that are public spaces, retail and commercial are a disgrace. Lack of management, time, resources to keep the city the way it should be. Lack of city departmental checking and quality control. Roadworks planning and implementation is a shambles and issues with safety controls. Street cleaning is a priority. Has to be better than it is, which is non-existent. Number 4, the CBD parks and reserves. Start planting some trees for the shade. Make the spaces more inviting, especially the waterfront area and adjacent spaces. Remove the car parks from Masonic Park. And I say park with the exclamation marks because it is a disgrace and it should never have been labelled a park the way it is. Plant some grass, some trees and extend the diagonal footpath through to the Willow Street. Keep those public facilities that are there, but remove the back wall of the bus shelter and add another row of seats facing into the park. Close off Wharf Street completely. There are small access to the Wharf Street retailers at the back of it, but they actually, if you look at it, can actually be linked to the back end of Robert Harris, which has got a parking area that comes off Red Square. Remove the car parking from the waterfront now. No, just do it. Too many arguments about, oh, we're going to lose car parks. Well, sorry, you're losing car parks all over the city, and we need to reactivate this city in some way, and that is one thing which we need to do. So add the grass where the cars were, and lots of trees to make it a park that it should be. The jewel in the crown of Tauranga City that will attract people downtown. Forget the railway line, work around it. Look at Chicago's waterfront for inspiration, where they have a major arterial road running right past downtown, and yet they still manage to have a wonderful park, public space connections with the city and the lake. Rework Red Square so that it is sheltered from the wind at one end and really inviting and people orientated by adding street furniture that is comfortable for a start, add lighting and plant some real trees. Not those, I don't know what they are, but they look like leftovers from probably 5 Christmases ago. It just looks desolate and has done so for some years. Upgrade the footpaths and the tiled artworks in the CBD. We understand the tile mosaics which have been removed from Wharf Street are not to be replaced. And they've been removed basically because of complaints about slippage. Well, I've never slipped over them, and no one that I've spoken to has. And I think it comes back to what I spoke to before about the maintenance of the city and keeping it clean and tidy. Innovation of activation trials. Close off whole streets if you need to. Other cities manage to do it. We just seem to always be not worrying about or engaging. Activate the existing laneways. Add music, bands and lighting and props. The laneway to the car parking building from Grey Street already has specialised lighting installed for such an occasion, but it's never used. Infrastructure contributions. Oh, this is a lovely one from my point of view as a consultant. The council system of charging is definitely at odds with the written city plan. I've yet to have someone come back from council with a legitimate answer that's, when you read it, it says one thing, and yet the council actually enacts another. Roading upgrade contracts. Stop this nonsense of last minute end of year financial ceiling works. Leads to the shoddy work which starts breaking up within a month. Up at Willow Street and Harrington Street, which are just outside the council chambers here, is an example that was done, I think, 2 years ago. And it literally, you might as well have not done it. It was just a waste of money because the seal came up within a week. All roads within the city should be hot mixed to lower the road noise. As with the city that gets larger with more vehicles, road noise rises exponentially. This noise affects everyone across our city due to its topography. And controlled use of large delivery trucks within the CBD. We don't need them. The guys can have smaller trucks and they use trolleys as they do in other cities. Upgrade the curbs and channels as some of the city's areas are still from the 1950s and 60s and they're failing. And also, if you expect the ratepayers to look after the front verges and berms of the city outside their properties, they need some decent curb and channels that they can actually cut edges to and look after, because I know the ones where we live, they're the old-fashioned click-together sort, and a lot of them are broken, they've fallen away, and we do the best we can, but and this goes back to this maintenance contract version of the city as well. City intensification. Taking too long, and the Te Papa Isthmus study being carried out at the moment may be implemented in 5 years, but will be 15 years out of date. Small and large developers, property owners need better help from council planners and development engineers now to stop the 9 to 12 month resource consent period. We've actually just been through two instances where it's taken between 9 and 15 months to get a resource consent through council, and it's just abysmal. Council needs to talk to all participants in the game, not just the high-roller developers or consultants that we seem to see working with council. Local tag group represents across the board consultants working, living, paying rates in the city that they call home, so have a very real stake in the game. Just stop ignoring them, use locals. We do have a brain and we do know what we're talking about. City plan needs to also be more flexible and a living document to cope with all of the above. I recently asked to have a submission made to change the city plan, and I was told it would take 5 years to implement the changes, and I said that's ridiculous. Something like a city plan, which is critical to this growth, takes so long to get someone to change a few words. And one of the main things is stop resurrecting old projects that have been turned down by city ratepayers just to keep staff and managers employed writing reports. I see my time's up, so basically you can read the rest of it, but I think we've all forgotten how to work together, how we've all forgotten to talk to each other, and how we've all forgotten to rely on the people who are right here within this city to make the changes necessary for the next 70, 80 years. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for your submission. Our next submitter is Joe Cavett from the Tauranga Community Housing Trust, but I also see Jackie Farrell there as well. Welcome up to the table here. We've got 10 minutes set aside, but if you finish a little earlier, there may be an opportunity for some questions. Thank you, and over to you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, councillors, your worship. I have actually got a copy, I'll pass that. Congratulations to all involved in the AFD milestone yesterday, and we look forward to the smart growth follow-up. I suggested adopting the Raranga weaving theme is especially significant as it supports the interconnectedness of all the decisions that we made. We all need to better engage and collaborate to weave people together to make positive change, as the document says. As you know, we consistently seek more affordable and more supply of social housing. That's the purpose of TCHT. Therefore, we strongly support page 73 giving priority A, top priority, to portfolio management of affordable housing and social housing in Western Bay of Plenty. We also urge urgent action on the planned integrated and regenerative Te Papa placemaking and housing supply in the next 1 to 3 years. That's great news. Can we all as stakeholders please promote the UFTI statement of being ambitious and aspirational while also being realistic? That is a real catchphrase that I think we need to tag to all our decision making. And that's written in the solution principles on page 117, which I'm sure you all know by heart already after a day. Under the above UFTI umbrella, TCHT wishes to emphasise 3 issues. Fees and charges to enable an affordable intensification, proposed divestment of elder housing and the intensification to Papa. The first one is a fairly operational, practical thing. We've made requests under the annual plan process for a rebate on our building and consent fees. But we're suggesting that all CHIPs, community housing providers, to help grow their supply of social housing by adding a statement to your development contributions policy to give at least 50% reduction to TCC fees at all stages of the project, and to especially appoint one named staff member who will be the direct ongoing contact for the project. We need certainty for our budgets and a more streamlined process to reduce delays, which I was just listening to now as well. So that's an operational thing to your development contributions policy. Please recognise the value of the CHIPs and that we do want to build things, but we are finding a lot of hurdles along the way. And of course the other one is about Plan Change 26 as well. Please, urgency for getting that underway. The second one is about elder housing. Since 2014, TCHT has been offering to work with TCC on options to enhance the quality, management and supply of elder housing in at least one block as a demonstration. You know what we did at Clark Street with 8 becoming 14. We want to be part of the elder housing solutions, but we urge you to weigh up the attraction of an early bulk sale, which may not be the hoped for cash cow due to the restrictive conditions, against taking a more innovative approach that will meet TCC and the community's long-term expectations, measures, etc. There are likely to be different options for each block, and a staggered approach may enable better redevelopment of this irreplaceable community resource. Let's weave good outcomes together. In other words, this rā-runga principle again. And Jackie will speak in a bit more detail about the Te Papa Peninsula and especially Kāinga Tupu. Thank you.
Kia ora. I was going to say good morning then, so it's probably been a long day for you. So we all know the headlines. We're here to talk housing. It's our passion. Of course, the least affordable city in New Zealand and 8th least affordable in the world. Headlines including $20 million a year being spent in the Bay of Plenty on motels, emergency housing, transitional housing and topping up accommodation supplement, $20 million a year. Current shortfall, about 1,000 houses short, estimated at the moment, likely to spiral to around 5,000 shortfall in the next 5 to 10 years. Other headlines, you know, people living in motels, substandard accommodation, overcrowding, homeless. The situation's getting worse every day. So we all understand the solution, and of course the answer is housing supply. And so I wanted to just touch on that a little bit. Housing capital is only available through Kāinga Ora, which is of course Housing New Zealand. In Tauranga, in the last 4 years, they have built 20 houses to add to the public housing stock over the last 4 years since 2016. That's 20 houses. In fact, they've actually only built 4 in the last year, which is half what they built the year before. So all the while we're in a housing crisis, and in fact public housing is decreasing in supply, not increasing. By comparison, our charitable trust, we've either built or we have in the pipeline 48 houses using our own money, loans, mortgages, grants, doing it on our own. Our number one goal is to increase community housing supply, and you can hear in my message that's been a really challenging and frustrating environment for us. But working in partnership with yourselves and your council officers on this shared goal is in fact crucial to solving this issue for the city and achieving more housing. Other local bodies around New Zealand, such as Hawke's Bay and Rotorua District Councils, are putting the spotlight on their unique housing needs and facilitating a place-based approach to solving housing supply in their cities. They're developing cities' housing strategies and action plans, and they're being politically vocal and demanding attention on this topic. And government is now, of course, supporting these projects, and they're gaining momentum and funding. I see Kāinga Tupu as a very similar approach, and I really commend Council on this work. It's early days, but I'm very hopeful that it will result in similar outcomes for Tauranga. But of course will require that same level of urgency and leadership to achieve that same national interest and support from government. We're also very supportive of the proposed plan changes for the Te Papa Peninsula, which Joe touched on, which will enable intensification and a change of land use for that corridor. From our perspective, this process just simply can't happen fast enough. We all know how long the pipeline of housing to get a house built takes, and it's particularly hard when you're struggled for funding, so we really need to get onto this quickly. We'd also then advocate for city plans to be considered and reviewed to free up other suitable parcels of land for intensification in the future. Council has consulted really widely on these changes, and we've been involved in that, but more work is needed to encourage all the landowners on that peninsula to realise the opportunity the plan changes will present. For example, the DHB proposed to build a single-storey mental health unit on their campus on that peninsula, and we understand, we really understand the need for this facility. No one argues with that. We also strongly challenge this decision, as we believe this land could be intensified to achieve more outcomes than a proposed single story for single use on that parcel of land. So changing plan rules is a great start, and we need to get on with that, but council leadership is needed to realise the vision of those intended outcomes from that plan change. It might not just happen. So I just wanted to say thank you for recognising that council can provide leadership and facilitate coordinated actions to increase Tauranga's housing supply with urgency. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe and Jackie. I've got one question from Councillor Robson.
I have a view, but I may be slapped if I express it, so instead I will ask a question. Do you believe that Tauranga City Council has been politically active enough in advocating to central government to address the housing shortage that is ripping apart the social fabric of this city?
Could I say that the signs from yesterday, I would say yes, provided you keep it going.
Mr. Baldock. Just in regard to your comments about the corner of 21st, or not quite the corner, but the mental health units, I just hope you are aware that we've got the message. And are you having any further direct conversations with the health board about this?
We are receiving good operational support on the relocation plan for the tenants. That's not an issue. For me, this is a more strategic opportunity for the city, and we've not had any further engagement with them on that. But I have talked to a large number of you and to politicians and other stakeholders in iwi. There seems to be a collective agreement that there's an opportunity here, but I've not personally had further conversations with the DHB.
Thank you, Joe and Jackie, for raising those points and also the points in your submission. We'll be making some decisions on those within the next couple of weeks, and we'll let you know how we get on. Thank you very much. Our next submitter is Ian Dustin. Ian, welcome back to the council chamber. And Ian's submission is on page 862 of your agendas. Oh, welcome, Mark. Are you coming up as well? Brilliant.
Thank you, Chairman, Mr Mayor, Councillors. I'm just resubmitting my submission from last year, so I'll take it as read. Presumably you read it last year as well. There has been a major change in the submission, and that's being the CIP submission to the government that many of you hopefully have received from me and received for this day. So in addition to the road to rail concept I advanced last year, there is a major addition being the methyl bromide fumigation facility. This will take all the methyl bromide fumigation out of the ship's holds and under tarpaulins on the wharf. Currently, 20% of the MB is vented into the air at Mount Maunganui. And I just did some quick figures before, just to put some figures on it. In the ships, they bomb the holes with 5 tonnes of MB per hold. And as you know, there's 5 holds per logging ship. So that's 25 tonnes of methyl bromide per ship. And typically there's half a dozen ships at a time at the wharf, so it's 30 tonnes of methyl bromide per turnaround. And so 20% of that is 6 tonnes of methyl bromide going over Mount Maunganui at all the time. And methyl bromide, as you know, is a deadly poison. So this is a major health hazard to those citizens living at the Mount and to the harbour. Now, in 6.2 little c of the Bay of Plenty Natural Resources Plan, which is the operative BOP Regional Air Plan, it states, quote, using MB without effective recapture is a non-complying activity. Now, Genera, the fumigator with the monopoly of MB in New Zealand, is currently applying for a 15-year extension to use MB at the Mount. I call on the Tauranga City Council to submit on this application, opposing it, because there is an effective recapture proposal before you which can capture 99.9% of the methyl bromide. Now, in the direction and minutes of the decision-making committee of the Environment Protection Agency issued yesterday, the DMC acknowledged that they were now aware of an alternative procedure to recapture MB and will be taking that new procedure into account when the hearing takes place on the current recapture control due to come into force on the 28th of October this year. I call on the Tauranga City Council to support those locals who are submitting that the poisoning of the air they breathe by methyl bromide must cease and the effective recapture technology is put in place. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. And did you have anything to add, Mark, or just in support of the submission?
Oh, Mark, by the way, has done this fantastic work for us, which you probably have seen on the that's the Ranguru.
Thank you. Yes, we've received via email. Yeah.
Yeah. So and with the Dropbox, you probably expanded them and recognised the proposal.
Perhaps pass them around as well.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. Any questions, colleagues of Ian Councillor Baldock, followed by Councillor Robson.
Yeah, hi Ian. So
Larry.
you made a request to the PGF, didn't you?
The CIP, yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I thought one went to the regional fund though.
No,
also.
it's too big a proposal for the regional fund.
All right. So just the CIP.
Yeah.
And what's the response been that you've heard?
Well, as you know, there was it $460 billion worth of submissions, so we didn't cut the mustard.
We got a polite letter saying you can decline. You weren't successful.
At least it was polite, I suppose.
Yeah.
Councillor Robson.
Sorry, just one
yeah.
supplementary. What's
Yep.
the response been from regional council as the owners of the Rangiora Business Park, and have they been supportive of what you're talking about?
Well, they are the owners. We are partial owners. We own 35 hectares. They own effectively 60 hectares, and we have a option on another 25 hectares. So we are sort of potentially half owners of the business park. But they, as an organisation, it's a bit like I heard a similar before about the marine precinct. You know, councils should not be in business, and the simple fact is that they've owned Rangiora for over 15 years, and it's grass and kiwi fruit, and Tauriko, which was consented at the same time, is fully sold out. That's the difference between private enterprise and councils.
Councillor Robson.
Yeah, specifically on the MB proposal, and thank you, Mark, for the drawings. Have you had any conversations with the port, Kiwi Rail? How far have the conversations gone in terms of?
Yes, Kiwi Rail designed that facility, and it's the most effective distance in terms of what Kiwi Rail term a shunt to the port in New Zealand. In other words, they're very, very supportive of having that log facility at Rangiora. The port, to put it kindly, is a very, very successful business and a fantastic business, but slightly arrogant probably because of it. They have not supported the proposal because, as you may or may not be aware, there's 7 watersiders died in Nelson through MB, and 4 watersiders at the Mount have been taken to the hospital. So their legal advice is that the Port of Tauranga has nothing to do with methyl bromide, which is a bit ingenious. But so yes, I have had a phone call from Mr. Kneebone, who's the property manager, who said that the port want nothing to do with this proposal because they are merely a landlord of methyl bromide fumigation.
Yep, thank you. Further to that then, have you had any discussions with regional council or the district health board in terms of this proposal?
No, I have, as the mayor would know, and as the CEO, effectively given all this information to the 3 councils, the 3 CEOs of the councils, and to many of you councillors, the feedback has been stunningly quiet.
And there's a pattern here. Priority 1, have they embraced what you're proposing?
Yeah, we have. Yes, we. I've met with Priority 1, and they support the proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, colleagues? No, in that case, thank you, Ian and Mark, for the presentation. And we've just got the visuals just making their way around the chamber now, and they'll end up at the end there, if that's all right. Yes, please, Mark, yes.
Just to make a note that this project is in line with central government's push through the government policy statement for the strategic priorities of safety, better travel options, improving freight connections and climate change. So this project goes beyond just MB. It's a log transfer station and debarking facility. So we could potentially, under the Becker report, get 1,000 trucks off the road per week coming to the port. So it's a modal shift project as well as MB recapture. And so that's significant effect on congestion and traffic to the port.
And thank you for the amount of work that you put into the submission as well. We'll be considering it over the next couple of weeks, and we'll get back to you. So thank you. Much appreciated. Our next submitter, colleagues, is Michelle Bishop. Michelle, welcome. Michelle's submission is on page 95 of our agenda. Yep. Michelle, is this the first time you've spoken in front of Tauranga City Council? Oh, well, make yourself at home. Make yourself at home. So there's the button in front of you. There's a purple button on the microphone, which you can press when you wish to speak. It'll stay on. And then, so we've got 10 minutes, and you can use that time as you wish. And after you've concluded, if it's before the 10 minutes, some of my colleagues may have a question or two for you. But thank you, and feel very welcome.
Oh, right. Thank you, because I'm feeling very nervous. This is in answer to Annual Plan Version 1, which I hadn't gone into everything in as much detail as I did for Version 2. But until I saw what the questions were in Version 2, I hadn't withdrawn Version 1. So this will be very short and sweet and not nearly as in-depth as what you've been listening to. The first question is, which infrastructure investments are most important to you and why? I should state I'm just speaking on behalf of myself as a resident of Tauranga. Anything that enables one to live and function efficiently in a community or city, which is water supply, road transport, rubbish collection. However, we don't want rubbish collection handled by council. We believe we get a better job from private contractors, wherein the blue glass collection bins, which everyone must have from council, appear to continue rising. We're worried that this will happen with the council collected bins which we may be delivered. Next question, view on the proposed rates increase for 20 to 21. Absolutely preposterous in the current climate. Originally 12.6 plus rubbish at around 500, and at this stage it came down to 7.5. Under normal circumstances, even 7.5 is high. In view of the COVID lockdown, resulting unemployment, business closure, etc., it should be a nil increase, as most other councils are considering and appear to be willing to adopt something rather close to that. Council should look at the population statistics. Many residents are elderly and on fixed income. Unemployment, although not so much of an issue before, certainly has jumped these days. It'll take businesses many years to regrow if they survive. Next question was, what is your view on the 3.9% increase to overall rates, followed by 2.1 increase to overall general rates, followed by 1.5 increase to overall general rates? Well, it doesn't take much of a brain to work out that that all adds up to 7.5%, which I've answered above, and includes no provision for actual debt repayment. Borrowed money accumulates interest very fast and interest compounds. Ratepayers will have these debts for many years. If you consider the rates increases are too high, what projects from capital expenditure or services do you recommend reducing to lessen the rates increase? Anything that is not considered essential. i.e. redoing city streets and parks. Durham Street, Wharf Street, Elizabeth Street, those kind of things, prettying them up. Having empty houses sitting around the council has bought in the past. 16 left at Bella Vista. There's also some in Bethlehem and Otamotai. Sell them to reduce debt. I believe you might be looking at doing that in version 2 of the annual plan. Reduce staff numbers. As I read somewhere, Tauranga has more staff for council size than any other council in New Zealand. It would appear our deputy mayor, and this is old news now, is the highest paid deputy in the country. And I query that because as a deputy, Tauranga is a lot smaller than Auckland or Wellington. Business directors are reducing their salaries, yet council has not even made any indication of doing so. I should remind you that this was originally written under Annual Plan 1. Some councils have reduced staff. In Auckland, quite a lot. Tauranga hasn't. Don't carry on with pet projects. Keep to what is required plus debt reduction to keep council afloat. No more high borrowing for projects. It reminds me of the Muldoon era. Borrow, borrow, and then grizzle because you can't get enough. Basically prioritise and keep within budgets, like we the minions have to. Get rid of the Bella Vista lawsuit. It makes council look stupid when council has been told by the courts it was their employees and contractors who actually breached the Crimes Act. Another lawsuit currently before courts is the inadequate pool fencing in Papamoa, where the neighbour is being sued for having a trailer in his carport, which could be climbed on to gain access to the next door pool. It appears lawyers are very possibly called in far too often to feather their own nest. I mean, that is such a silly issue. Acknowledge mistakes of the past, fix them and move forward slowly. These would include the fiascos at Greerton and the Harrington Street car park. Somebody is responsible for design failures. They should have professional indemnity insurance. Use that, not our funds. What is your view of reducing the uniform annual charge to 10%? As I've said, this could be a two-edged sword. Many seniors live in villages, some in prime spots. Villages have to pass on rate increases to a population that may be not able to afford it. There is a village in Golden Sands whereby the land is leasehold and tiny two-bedroom homes are built. The residents own the home, but not the land. As you realise, they can take the home away with them, but they have to leave the land vacant. Talking to one resident, she is paranoid that the proposed increase will be unaffordable for her, and she's 80 years old. As Tauranga has so many villages, they should be on a separate system for rating, so that those in their remaining years don't have to think about moving to goodness knows where, adding stress onto them. Yes, otherwise I believe 10%. What is your view on the commercial differential increasing to 1.12? Under normal circumstances, yes, in favour of this. Tauranga businesses pay less commercial rates than in other cities. This should be rectified. However, I do not believe this is the time to load up struggling businesses who've been closed for between 1 to 3 months, with overhead still running, lay off staff and try their best just to survive. Give them a break and revisit when the climate can sustain an increase. I believe this is something we are stuck with in the interim. They need to survive for the sake of jobs. Incidentally, I don't own a business in Tauranga or anywhere else in New Zealand. Is there anything else you would like to tell us about this annual plan? The contributions policy, revenue and finance. Development contributions could be increased a tad with the amount of people wanting to come and live here. Council should be more amenable to receive money than land for parks, as town planners appear to not do a very good job of thinking into the future. This could also help council coffers. There are already so many parks and green areas around Tauranga that council have to maintain, and equipment for like children's gear, that some parks and areas appear to be forgotten. Finance policy. Reduce debt, keep to essentials, and leave pet projects alone until we can afford all the nice to haves. User fees and charges. Keep independent contractors for rubbish removal. It's cheaper for ratepayers than having council take over. So we feel, or so ratepayers feel. Continue user pays for green waste. That's pretty standard in most other cities. Cardboard, plastic and tins should go into one bin and all other stuff in another bin. Don't bring in separate food waste, as some people may very well be so embarrassed at what they throw out, they will put in the general bin so it's not apparent to neighbours. Many other... well, actually, I think that's true when you think about it. Many others will have nothing to put in it as they compost, or have so little to put in the bin in the first instance, it's not worth collecting. And that would be people living alone. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Michelle, and thanks for making the journey over to Tauranga this afternoon. Are there any questions for Michelle? No, there being no further questions, thank you very much for your submission.
And thank you for not
we'll be
questioning
considering
me.
it over the next couple of weeks and make a decision by the 30th of July.
Well, I'm still waiting for a time to come and speak on my second submission.
Version 2, thank you. Colleagues, I don't believe our last submitter has arrived, so now that it's 5 minutes past their due speaking time, I will adjourn the meeting until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So thank you for your presence. And thank you, Sam.